Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, and thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening on this Thursday evening for this important presentation about a public safety complex. This evening, we're joined by the entire Board of Selectmen, Chair Rich Ihacker, Vice Chair Derek Valise, and Clerk Dave Dufresne. We're also joined here on the dais by the town's financial advisor, Unibank, Ben Oglesby, as well as representatives from Tecton Architects, who conducted this study that is before you this evening with its principal architect, Jeff McAway, who is here this evening, as well as Katrina Pacheco, who is also from Tecton Architects, who will also be making a brief presentation as well. We also have our fire chief here, Adam Lavoie. Adam's down here, as well as we will be having a representative from our police department. The police chief is out of town on a vacation, pre-planned vacation, but he is heavily involved in this project as it moves forward. So what has gotten us here this evening is there's three public presentations that we are in the process of doing on a proposed public safety complex here in the town of Warren. The town was a recent recipient of a state and federal grant with a combination of state grant funds and ARPA money that got us here today. That grant conducted a study, a feasibility study on constructing a public safety complex here in the town. That study can be found on the town's website, www.warren-ma.gov, for further review by anybody in the audience and the public, as well as copies of the presentation that is going to be displayed this evening. That can also be found on the town's website as well. We are also soliciting public comment from the public. So if a neighbor or a friend or somebody that could not be here this evening, please send us an email. Send me an email to townadministrator@warren-ma.gov, and I will make sure that it gets to the Board of Selectmen for their review when this process is over. So all of the information is meant to give you, the audience, as much information as you need on this important project. This study cost the town zero money. Whatever we have done thus far has cost the town zero money. We have paid for it through a grant and through the use of some ARPA funds to get here this evening. So it costs us zero to get here, you, the taxpayer, all this information. The architects and the study is going to lay out the costs, proposals, and options. These are just options here this evening. These options may change based on public input, based on recommendations from you, the public. So this process is meant to be open and transparent, for you to ask questions, for you to engage with the town's leadership to help us make a better decision for the town. So we want to get people involved. We want people to be here. We will have one more presentation of these in September, on September 26th at 1 p.m. That will be at the Shepherd Building in the gym. So we hope that if you know of some people that could be here tonight, please invite them to that meeting in September as we wrap up this process. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to take us through the presentation. But thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening.
Thank you, Jim. So my name is Jeff McAway. I'm a principal with Tecton Architects out of Hartford, Connecticut, and Providence, Rhode Island. And I specialize in the design of public safety facilities, have done so for the last 38 years. And it's our pleasure to be exploring the possibilities with the community here in Warren. I did want to point out one thing that I'll revisit later in the presentation, actually towards the end, that at this point, no issue is before the ballot. There's no project that's going before a vote at this time. We're still in the gathering feedback phase. So by all means, we encourage some good conversation tonight. We're gonna talk about some important things, but we're gonna talk about some scary numbers too. So I think I think getting some good feedback and understanding where the community is at is really an important part of this process. So one other correction: Katrina Pacheco is with a consultant of ours, H2M Architects. We work with H2M Architects, who also specializes in public safety facility because of their vast experience in fire station facilities, where the strength of my experience is although I do both, is in police facilities. So we've got a really good team with a lot of horsepower in terms of experience and capability looking at this project. So a little bit of what we're going to look at tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the challenges with the current facilities. Hopefully, Mr. Whitcomb joins us so that we can have him participate in that. But we'll talk a little bit about the review of the programming exercise. Today we're going to switch it up. Last time we focused a lot on the study details. Tonight we're going to go through a little session that we're going to talk about the modern station design considerations. Police and fire station design has changed a lot in the 38 years that I've been doing it, and I'll point out some of those changes as we go through the discussion. But we wanted to bring some of the current thinking forward for you to think about as you consider solutions for your community. We will talk about the 3 current conceptual designs, and then we'll go into what the opinion of probable cost based on our outside cost estimators would look like. And then we'll do some what-if scenarios. What if we did some different solutions? And then there's a little blurb on how do we choose, and then we'll finish with the next steps, where once again I will point out that there is no ballot question going up on a town meeting vote at this time. We're still in the exploratory phase relative to that. So, challenges with the current facilities. Oh, look, I've lost the fire chief now too, so I'm going to dance, I guess, for a moment here. I'm gonna just jump over to the police side. Chief Millett is not with us tonight, but I will talk briefly about some of my observations with your police facility. And that is that, right now, predominantly the department operates out of a few rooms. They don't have anything near what would be meet Massachusetts accreditation standards or international accreditation standards, for that matter. And the facilities are pretty worn and tired, and a lot of crowding goes on. From particular concern from my point is the prisoner processing area and how that's handled. I think there's a lot of safety that could be designed into that to improve the safety not only for police officers but for the detainees. There's a lot of risk involved in there. And then, the public interface is a little bit rough as well. So I think there's really good opportunities to improve the working environment. We are going to talk about a lot more of the considerations that go into a modern design for that later in the presentation, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. But in the absence of Deputy Chief Whitcomb, I'm going to ask Chief Lavoie to come up and talk a little bit about what it's like with the conditions at the fire station facilities.
Good evening, everyone. Lieutenant Whitcomb couldn't be here tonight. He had a family emergency. I just got off the phone with him, so he apologizes for not being able to make it. I'll do my best to answer any questions on their behalf if I can. Basically, again, I just want to, before we even go through this, I just want to reiterate what Mr. Ferreira has said. Please understand this was a study that we were asked to participate in. This was something that was brought to us to participate in creating what would be a modern day station for our needs for 75 years from now. And that's the point, is that this is a facility that would function for 50 to 75 years. So please understand that going in. I know there's a lot to kind of digest through this, but basically we know that the buildings themselves are especially the police building, there's a lot of issues with that building, and they desperately need a new place to habitate and to have their services out of. Our stations, they're about 75 years old, each one of them. We're basically, the issue that we have, the biggest issue we have is we're out of room. We do not have any more room in them. If for anyone that's been to our fire stations, we're basically hugging the walls and walking by the trucks as we speak. We have to custom order certain trucks, especially at Station B, to be able to fit in the doors, because the doors are only 10 feet tall. So we have a lot of crowding issues there. We do not have any, quarters for anyone to be able to sleep there during storms or anything like that. So unfortunately, they're just 75-year-old buildings. So we're looking at other options behind the scenes. Again, this is the study. This is the scope of the study that we were asked to participate in, is a new complex. Certainly, there are other options that we will explore and can explore. And again, there's no vote for this. This is just informational only. So here at our Station A, this is our main headquarters. Our two main engines, our engine 2 in the middle, our engine 3 on the end, and an ambulance comes out of that. We also have a small brush truck bay on the side. Station B is the station in West Warren. We have our tanker truck down there. We have a brush truck. We have a military Humvee and a couple of a small boat that's down there. We usually go down and get that equipment and bring it back. It certainly is inconvenient to go down there and have to pick up that equipment and get that on the road, but that's what we have to do. It's an unmanned station. Times have changed quite a bit. So all of our staff come out of our headquarters here at Station A. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions that come up throughout this presentation.
Thank you, Chief. And I think Lieutenant Whitcomb will be pleased that I promoted him this evening. What's that? So a little bit about the programming exercise. The first step in our study was to take a look at programming, and programming is not to be confused with a computer programming. It's a term we use in architecture where we talk about what are the spaces you need inside a building to function for today and for into the future. We always like to be looking forward to future possibilities. I can't tell you how many stations I've designed where the community picks a small property, and we always encourage them, think further into the future, because if you're going to invest money in this project, you need to have the room to grow over time, because they're big investments as you move on. Having said all of that, we started out this study looking at not only police and fire, but also town offices. And so we explored them each individually, and you can see up on the screen, at the top of the screen, if you look over to the left, the fire department was programmed individually at 16,670 square feet. The police department was at 9,875. I'll put a caveat on that. That's if we leave the firearms training simulator in the town offices like it is today. And then the town offices were programmed in at about 15,430. And there was an idea at the initiation of this study that maybe if we did a joint complex for all of these together, there'd be enough savings, because they share spaces and, and the efficiencies of cost of doing a bigger building, that maybe there was an advantage in that. So we did a little exploration to that, and so down in the lower left-hand corner, you can see that if we combine the fire and police program and took a look at the spaces that they could share, training rooms and possibly kitchen facility, break facilities and fitness facilities, we discovered that we could save about 1,145 square feet by sharing. And then, of course, if we look at the project, including the town offices, it would have been 41,975 square feet. And you got that down to about 40,000 by sharing. So at that time, the realization was we were talking about a very, very, very big project, and that the advantages of sharing space were not as great as hoped for. So the attention at that point moved on to focusing on the public safety facilities. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read these slides instead of looking at the screen now. So last time we went through a lot of the test fits, the site test fits that we explored, and we did a lot of them looking at different parcels throughout the town. All of that information is available in the study that's online, as well as the recording of the previous presentation. But we decided to switch it up a little bit today and talk about what happens when we design modern facilities. And we wanted to highlight a number of the things that are really important, that are sort of the industry leading issues when you design a fire station or a police station. So I've got Katrina here today to help me talk about some of the fire station related issues. And just really quickly down at the bottom, you'll see that some of the topics we're going to talk about are health and safety. That is a big issue in the fire service these days, and we'll tell you why. Making sure that we're planning for the future and where that change takes us. You know, we look at a lot of departments today that do not meet NFPA standards. And, you know, that's okay because you're dealing with what your resources provide. But ultimately, NFPA standards roll into ISO ratings, which actually have an impact on your insurance costs for a community. So thinking about what happens in the future is a big issue. And then thinking about program equity to make sure that we have a program that allows for changes in the male-female ratio. Both police and fire over the last few decades have seen a dramatic change in the amount of female officers that are involved in those. And I can't tell you again how many stations we look at today where one of the big issues is we have female officers, we have female firefighters, and we have no facilities for them. And I can tell you over the last 7-8 years we've been tracking this, particularly in the police department side, we're seeing a much greater percentage of female officers getting recruited, and a lot of departments are engaged in the 30-30 program, which means they're looking for 30% female participation in staffing by the year 2030. So there's a big emphasis on changing that dynamic as well. So there's a number of things we can look at here. Katrina, I'll invite you to jump in here, but you know, one of the first things we talk about is apparatus bay, the height and width.
Right, and I'd like to thank everyone as well for coming out this evening. And first, a show of hands. Who has ever visited Station A? Okay, good number of people. Awesome. How about Station B? Pretty much the same people. So I appreciate that because having your understanding of what their challenges are, as the chief was talking about, is key for anything to move forward, for an idea to move to the next phase. So certainly, as Jeff was talking about, we look at what the current situation is, but also what do they need just to operate. So you're talking about, you can see in the photo there, how close the engine is to the wall and to the other vehicles within there. If they can't get to the vehicles quickly enough, that's going to impact the rescue time for you, for your families, for anyone in the community. So being able to move freely around these vehicles with the equipment that they may have on at the time, they need to be able to do that. So certainly the space between the vehicles and the size of the vehicles impacts the square footage that is needed for a new bay.
Whoops, I double tapped there. All right, so the next one we want to talk about is firefighter health. And again, this is a big issue. Both H2M and Tecton participate in the Station Design Conference, which happens annually and talks about station design issues. And I can tell you that the firefighter health issues are a huge matter that's under consideration from NFPA, from OSHA, and absolutely for designers of fire facilities.
Certainly, and so you heard some mention of NFPA regulations and standards. There's FEMA FA 185, and I know that one of my colleagues that I've worked with for many years was just on an NFPA board writing about these. So dealing with carcinogens and understanding where they're coming from. It's not just from an active fire site. It's from other things within the building that may have been sitting there latently for a long time. So it's not just that. The transition zones are essentially anywhere from what we would call a dirty part of the building, like the bays, where anyone who's coming back from a scene, if they haven't fully decontaminated off-site, but they're coming back with something, they need a place to clean before they get into other parts of the building, like the offices or the storage areas or any place like that.
And then, of course, firefighter training is a big issue that we think about these days.
Right, I would say I've been doing this type of facility for the past 26 years in my professional career. And Training within the buildings is something that we've always been a proponent of, and making space to do that is an easy thing to do when you think about it. If you're not necessarily getting into architectural designs at this point, but a bay space, as you know, should be tall enough for the vehicle to be in there, should be tall enough for someone to get on top of the vehicle and take care of things that are on the top, because it's a great big toolbox, those vehicles. You need to have spaces that are that tall that you can fit smaller spaces double height in that area. And we've found that that's been a great advantage for all of our clients. Things like bailout training, Denver drills, manholes built into the floors. Those are easy things to accommodate when you have a bay of the right size. The recruitment aspect of it is when you have a great station, more people are likely to either volunteer or be hired, depending on the situation. And having a space that the firefighters or police are proud of carries a long way.
And then the last big consideration is the firefighter live workspaces, whether that's offices or the day room, living quarter spaces that the firefighters have in the station. You know, this has a lot to do with their physical preparedness and their mental well-being. So that's a big factor that we think about as well.
Right, so as Jeff is saying, when you have what we call a day room, that's where firefighters, or I guess police could have a day room as well, where they can be together. They're not on a call, but they are socializing. And in the days that we have now of people on computers and on their cell phones and whatnot, having a space to connect person to person is truly important. That face-to-face, I mean, we went through COVID. I'm a teacher at a university as well as an adjunct faculty, and I was teaching at the time when it hit, and we had to go all remote. So going from in-person to little pictures on a screen was not helpful. Getting back to being person in person and having the chance to grow those personal relationships as a family, because after all, that is what these people become together as family. We want to give them that opportunity.
So just a couple data points. One time recently, I was giving part of this presentation. We were accused of trying to use scare tactics. I'm not trying to scare you. I just want you to be aware of the situations out there. All of this, there's attribution that Jim is sitting in front of. That's all right. Don't worry about it, Jim. That's on the slides as well that you have in your deck. But you know, as in 2020, we had 44% of reported injuries were not sustained during an emergency response. This is fire station sustained emergency. So there's a lot of injuries that happen inside the station. And Katrina talked about the tightness of bays. That is a major contributor to it. You know, when you're responding, there's all sorts of, you know, everybody's trying to get out the door, get their gear on and respond quickly. It's an opportunity for accidents. And that's why we designed to create an opportunity for loading up on that truck safely. Also, overcrowded apparatus space tends to lead to extended response and puts firefighters at risk of increased injury. You know, that's a fact. Again, we saw how tight your bays were. We'll show you some examples of what the optimal condition looks like. Oh, and here it is. So this happens to be a fire station we did in Lexington, Massachusetts, both of our firms together. I don't expect you to live up to Lexington standards. This is not Lexington. But the important thing to think about here is that you do need the proper space. You need to have the vehicle exhaust ventilation system, those yellow hoses hanging down. You need to have all the provisions and the ability to get to the trucks safely without overcrowding. And then a few other, I pointed out the electric drops, #1, the air drops, #2, our hose reels on the walls that will allow us to clean the vehicles, to decontaminate them, and of course our vehicle exhaust extraction, which are those big yellow hoses hanging down. And then a big issue that we talked about and Chief Avoid just mentioned is the door size. So the doors are, in modern fire stations, the standard is 14 feet wide, 14 feet deep. High, excuse me. And there's a really good reason for this. I actually noticed this a lot while I was living down further south, is I would pass under these overpasses on the highway, and there was always a sign up there that said 13 foot 9. 13 foot 9 is 3 inches shy of 14 feet. Why do we do 14-foot doors? Because a lot of highway overpasses sit at 13 foot 9, which means that the biggest apparatus that's going to drive on most of our highways is going to fit inside a 14-foot bay. The width is really important too, because trucks have gotten a lot wider than they used to be. I love looking back at all the historic images of fire stations where these really cool little trucks are sitting in the bays, and they are 3-4 feet narrower than anything that we put in the bays these days. And making sure that you have the room to negotiate and to swing that truck as it exits is really, really important stuff. Little example here, we talked, Katrina mentioned about transition zones. We think about the safety zones in the fire station. Our bright yellow zone there, that's where all the trucks sit. It's called the hot zone. That's where all the contaminants come back from the fire. And I was sitting in my living room just the other day thinking about this, there was a time when I was younger when I'd look around and, I'd see a lot of wood and maybe some furniture with some stuffed sofas and things like that. Now I look around and I see computers and televisions and all sorts of different devices that are made of plastics and electronics and all sorts of things. And I started thinking about all of the different stuff that we've introduced into our home environment that in a fire situation becomes out in the atmosphere and that our firefighters are exposed to. So thinking about all of that, it gives us a really good understanding why there's such a consideration about firefighter health and safety these days. The orange areas, by the way, there's some on the side and to the right here, or on the top and to the right of that big apparatus bay. Those are all the support facilities. A lot of those go into cleaning the gear to make sure that when the firefighters put on their protective equipment, that it's clean and it's not carrying the contaminants from the last fire, that you can store that gear in a safe environment, and that the SCBA, the self-contained breathing apparatus that they use, are well maintained and clean so that they can use those in a fire situation. And of course, in this case, you'll see back in the upper right-hand corner where we have our kitchen day room, so the firefighters are ready to respond immediately to the apparatus bay floor. And then just again, a couple more data points. Again, this is a big issue in the press. It doesn't take a lot of searching on the interweb to find the issues and the cases related to this, but the amount of time spent at fires has a lot to do with the risks of diagnosis of cancer as well as leukemia. There are a lot of states now where if a firefighter puts in a claim for a health issue related to these things, where it's automatically assumed it's because of the job. So that's a risk for the community and for your insurance when you think about that. So protecting the firefighters is a good idea because we like them, but it's also a good idea because it saves you money in the long run. And then, of course, station age is also a big factor in thinking about the contaminant levels. When I did my very first fire station in 1986, we did not have all of the things that we've just talked about. We didn't have all the protections of transition zones and vehicle exhaust extraction systems. All of this stuff is fairly recent in the fire service, but it's really important stuff to making sure that the firefighters can do their job safely. And then I will let Katrina talk a little bit about, we've got a SCBA space here.
Right, so what you see up on the screen on the left-hand side is the current situation in Station A, where you have SCBA, the self-contained breathing apparatus, parts and pieces all jumbled in one room. In general, you don't want to have storage of firefighter gear in the same place that you've got the place where you're trying to create breathing air for them that they need when they go into a fire. They need that special device on their backs to be able to breathe safely. What you see on the right is from the Lexington station, where a new compressor that you see on the left is what puts the air into the tanks that they wear on their backs. So in the newer stations, there's enough room to store and clean. What you see on the right-hand side is a 4-bay sink with face shield hooks on the wall. That's so that for each step of disinfection for those units, because they're breathing in and out and it's their personal masks, they have the proper way to take care of their gear. So that's part of what we're looking to provide for them.
Chief, can I put you on the spot? How many sinks do you have for cleaning SCBA now?
We have 0 sinks that are designated for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's NFPA standard. That's what your firefighters are living with.
So just to explain, it's a little hard to see, but just to give a little bit more insight on this. So the picture on the left is Station A, that's the back room of Station A. What you see on the right-hand side, you can see a couple of buttons and a blue machine. That's the current compressor. It is.
Excuse me.
Sure. Is that working?
I think so.
So what you're seeing on the left-hand side is the back room at Station A. This is directly behind the apparatus bay. The blue machine that you can see that's got some buttons on it, that is our SCBA filling station or a compressor. The picture on the right is a much larger unit, but a newer unit. And then right behind that is a gear dryer. Both of those pieces of equipment were gotten off of or were received from a federal grant, so they did not cost the town anything over the last few years. On the left-hand side, you're going to see some oxygen tanks. That's where we fill all of our oxygen tanks for the truck. It's a small cascade system. I do want to say that I want to ensure that everyone here knows, because I've heard some people talk, and I understand this is a huge project, a lot of talking in the background, but please understand that we are very proud of the 2 stations that we have, okay? We maintenance those stations every single day, all right? I don't want anyone to be under the false impression that we let these stations just go to nothing and we're not taking care of them. That's absolutely a falsehood. We maintenance them every day. The firefighters have a full duty list every single day with it, you know, mopping floors, vacuuming it out, cutting lawns, you know, dressing the station up as best we can. We do the best with the space that we have, and we always will do that. And I promise everyone in here. Again, we were asked to participate in this study for a modern-day station, okay, and what that entails. And Jeff has done a great job, everyone's done a great job in trying to make everyone understand that once we step into a new building, a lot more standards come into play. We have to have isolation areas. These areas now, we get back from a fire, we wash our masks and everything else in the same sink that the firefighters wash and use the bathroom in. Upstairs, we have the sink, that day room that you see upstairs. We have a basic room for, you know, cooking and stuff like that. Station B has our training room above it. But again, I don't want anyone under the false impression that we just don't do anything to these stations. They are very well maintained, but they're 75 years old. And they're very limited in space, and we have to make the best out of every little piece of space that we have. So everything that we do is part of our daily living in the sense that, you know, we clean our gear in the back room where the door is. There's an extractor in there where we wash the gear, we bring it out, we put it in the gear dryer, which we just got off a grant. Literally, it was delivered 2 weeks ago. We put that in there. We can dry 2 sets of gear at a time. As you can see, this gear was just recently cleaned. This was a picture I took the other day. That's why there's gear on the floor, because it just came out of there. It was done dried and hadn't been put back on the racks yet. But all that stuff that we have in the buildings, we are required to clean these firefighters' gear every time. We leave it in there, you know, they could have some serious problems. And cancer in the fire service is the #1 topic right now that's out and about, because so many firefighters either don't make it to retirement, or they do, and 2 years later they're diagnosed with cancer from all these years of exposure to this. So we're all trying to get better at making sure that we're protecting our firefighters. But, you know, please, again, if anyone would like to tour the stations, come on down. You know, we'll be more than happy to accommodate you anytime. But please understand, we take great pride in our stations. That's why our buntings are up during holidays. We do that stuff because we enjoy doing that, all right? So I don't want anybody to think that we just letting them fall apart. That's not the case.
This is an interesting slide. Again, I'm not trying to scare people here, but I think the message that I'm trying to deliver is how important training is. And, you know, this is a big issue on both sides of the police-fire equation right now, that better training is required. And, you know, basically the skills that you need when you're out trying to save a life, or when you're fighting a fire, or where you're dealing with a vehicle extraction, in order to be ready to respond to that appropriately, you need to train for that appropriately. And so that means that when they're not maintaining the building, that they're spending a lot of time training as well. And so making sure that you have simple provisions in the facility that allow for that training. Classrooms is one of those, but the physical training opportunities that Katrina explained earlier about setting up opportunities for ladder drills and hose drills and various kinds of confined space related activities is really important, because now you know what to do, you're comfortable with it, and you can execute it in the field when somebody needs you. So this is just an example. This is, again, one of the classroom spaces. You can see right now up in the bubbles in the upper left that right now the fire department has one sort of very big multi-purpose space. It's day room, it's kitchen, it's workspace, it's training space, it's exercise room, it's a little bit of everything. Great use of the space, but there's a little bit too much going on in there to do anything really well. So thinking about how can we make that make an improvement for the fire department in that is a really big issue.
Just one thing I wanted to add on the last. What you can also see in there are file cabinets. So that's another big issue that they have to deal with, is the medical records of any of the cases that they treat. You're dealing with the HIPAA Act. And as you're all familiar with that, I assume, they are storing this in their day room. Not that that's wrong or improper at this point, but it is not the best of situations.
Go ahead and advance and do that.
Okay. All right. So I think we understand the need that has been expressed to us by the fire chief and police chief and their crews. But what can we help design and provide for them simply? Okay, if you haven't tried to think about it, if there were tours of other stations you could do, I can give you a list. Certainly Lexington, which is what you see here, the double height of the bays. You can see on the left-hand side, the yellow on the floor is showing where the vehicle would park. So they're not hitting the back wall, there's enough room to get around them. See those little black squares on the wall? Those are actually D-rings that can be used for tying off the rope that they need for training. There are hooks above the windows that you see going into what's called a mezzanine area. It's efficiently using that double height of bay to provide training above the SCBA, above the storage, above utility spaces that are on the ground floor. The right-hand side, you can see what it looks like from that upper level. There are openings put into a wall where they can train, they can build, if they want to, additional things, but there's also hooks in the floor for them to tie off, and a gate. There's all kinds of very simple things you can do when you've got that double height space. So those are just a few examples.
So what we can do is, think about this from the firefighter's perspective, is make sure that we have the proper training opportunities so they know the skills that they need to employ in conducting their duty. We can think about the operations. How do we make sure that they have all the facilities they need and that we can create a safe environment for that? And then, of course, I did it out of order. We think about how do we preserve the health. And, I will say that the NFPA is a little bit lagging on the requirements for this, the transition zones. There is a position about creating what's called a transition zone. It's basically an airlock. When you go in a building and you go through that double set of doors. It's a lot like that, so that we change the pressurization of the air so that the air from the dirty side doesn't move to the clean side. We see a lot of departments going a lot further in the way that they do that transition, but simple requirements are there, and they can certainly help for the safety of your firefighters. And there's my operations, which I did out of order. So now we'll talk a little bit about police. And again, you'll see the couple bullets on the bottom. Some of the big issues that we talk about when we're designing police facilities these days is making sure that we understand the community focus, thinking about it from a recruitment and retention standpoint, and again, still safety and security. It's a different issue for police than it is for fire, but it still comes into play. The one thing I want to step back real quick on the recruitment and retention. Over the last 7, 8 years, there has been an exacerbation of what was already a shortage in the number of people that are seeking careers in law enforcement. There's a lot of that happening on the fire side as well. But we're hearing from a lot of departments across the country that getting good officers and getting them to stay is a big deal. It's particularly challenging for smaller communities where the department may take a candidate and get them through their initial police officer training, and then once they have that training, they may take a job in a larger community where there's more money. So making sure that we're thinking about how do we design facilities and provide facilities that are going to keep the people there. And part of that is culture, but a little bit of that is facilities as well. So again, thinking about community spaces, you know, I visit police stations every day, every working day of my life these days, but a lot of people don't. And for a lot of people, police stations are intimidating. And if you're the victim of a crime, they can even be more intimidating. So we like to think about what is the experience that the public has when they're coming and seeking help from the police department. How do we make that a more comfortable interaction? And how do we provide for some of the issues that you'll face as you engage with the police department? We think about the officer work environment. Do they have the tools to do the job? Do they have a proper report writing space? Do they have a proper roll call briefing area? Do they have the investigative equipment that they need? And do they have a safe environment for dealing with their detainees? So those are all big issues. Training facilities, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but again, training is big on both sides of the coin here for both police and fire. And then a little bit more about detention areas. Not every police department in the United States has a lockup in their facility. There is a lot of places where once they put somebody under arrest, it goes immediately to the sheriff's department. But in Massachusetts and Connecticut, where I live, we have a lot of lockup facilities, and that means that we've got to be really thinking about what is the risk for injury to the detainee, what is the risk of injury to the officer, and what is the risk to liability for the community if something goes wrong. This is actually this is from a St. John Policing and Society study, Victor St. John Policing and Society, that welcoming police station designs produce more pleasant emotional reactions and behavioral relevant perceptions, especially with those with prior arrests. Again, Lexington, I don't think you ought to build to Lexington. I'm not trying to build you a Taj Mahal. We can do a lot that's between here and there. Just happens to be I have brand new photos of this. But making sure that when you walk into the police, first off, when you're approaching the police station, you know where to go. You know where the main entry is. You're not wondering which door to go in. When you get into the station, that all the services you need are right there, that you can go right up to the main desk and ask for assistance. If you're looking for a records request, you know where to go for that. And if you are there to report a crime, that there's an appropriate environment to do that. We like to, over on the right-hand side of this picture, you see we've got a public interview space where an officer can sit down with a victim and talk about the issue, and you get a little bit outside of the earshot of anybody else in the lobby. But you also don't feel like you're sitting alone in a tiny enclosed room with a police officer, which can also be an intimidating experience. And then 72% of people feel safer and more willing to engage when the station featured visible reception areas. Again, this is all about, you know, how does it feel coming up to the police station? I served on the Community Policing Committee of the International Association for Chiefs of Police. One of the things that we talked about in a lot of communities is, you know, particularly when you think about, you know, people that come from different countries, that there's a lot of different perceptions about the police department. And some members of certain communities are afraid even to talk to police. And if you're talking about, you know, managing crime and managing challenges in your community, being able to engage in proper dialogue with the police department is a really important thing. There's again a view of that interview room where you get the space to talk privately with an officer. So paperwork is a big part of the police officer job. Everything that they do has to be recorded and properly documented. And so where you have that environment and where you have that environment inside the facility and whether it's easy to use is really important. You know, we see a lot of departments where you're operating out of a space with a lot of other people and a lot of other activity in there. It makes it really hard to sit down and fill in your case reports to make phone calls. So making sure you're thinking about that operational environment is important. This happens to be an example of a writing room. Up in the upper left-hand corner is the single space that the patrol officers use in your current facility. And that's report writing, that's roll call, it's file storage, it's training, it's everything. That's their space for everything. Again, I already mentioned training spaces. This is roll call space. This is important for those briefings in the morning. Your department does it around a conference table, which a lot of departments do. That's a perfectly fine technique. We would just like to make sure that the officers from the previous shift aren't still writing reports while you're trying to conduct a roll call operation. And then the importance of police training, of police officers. You know, I didn't realize a lot of this data until I actually looked it up for this slide, because I was there when Dwight Henniger, at the last bullet, started the trust building campaign. I was in the IACP Policy Council then, and he announced this campaign to build trust with communities with their police departments, and a big piece of that was training. And of course, I was around when the 2015 President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing came out, and a big part of that document was about training. What I didn't realize that in 1931 and 1967, there were other federal reports that also emphasized the importance of training. And once again, you need to make sure our officers are trained to deal with the kinds of interactions they deal with. We give them a tough job. I mean, it's not just writing tickets. That's part of the job. But it's dealing with tense situations. It's trying to engage and get information. It's trying to, you know, be ready to deal with if there is a physical altercation, or better yet, be ready to turn away from a physical altercation and, you know, talk a situation down. And a lot of that requires training and experience. Now, this happens to be a training. This one's not in Lexington. This is in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, but again, a proper training facility. And of course, you do have a firearms training simulator that is sitting inside the town hall office, but, you know, creating the opportunity for real life situation engagement is a big piece of making sure they're ready to respond appropriately in stressful situations. This was a recent survey that policeone.com, that's a website that a lot of police officers visit all the time, and they just did this big survey, and these two quotes came right out of that officers cited poor training, inexperience, and leadership as top risks, and the idea that judgment is just as important as knowledge. And so training for using proper judgment is an important thing that we think about when we're designing police stations. And then finally, I talked about the detention areas. Again, thinking about how do we make sure that the process is smooth and it's safe for both officer and for detainee. We want to make sure that they can come in, they can get through the process. A lot of detainees are very cooperative when they're inside the police station. Some do not, and so we've got to be prepared for both cases. Massachusetts is a leader in their standards for holding facilities, for lockup facilities. We periodically research across the country what are the standards for that to make the safest environment, because there's a lot of risk in there of detainees engaging in self-harm. In fact, the first 24, 48 hours after apprehension can be a real stressful period for a lot of people. We want to make sure that they come in safe and that they go out safe as well. And then the last piece that I didn't include in that initial list is thinking about how do we handle evidentiary materials. This is a huge problem because, I mean, how many people, you know, are aware that, you know, that the biggest issue when you do a house is there's never enough storage? Everybody's seen that, right? And that's true of school buildings and all sorts of buildings. Well, evidentiary storage is a big deal because some of that evidentiary material you have to store forever, for a very, very long time. And so it is a storage need that keeps on growing, and making sure that you're making the smartest choices about how you manage that storage is a big deal. And the processing area that goes along with that is also an issue. Again, there's a study here that talked about chain of custody issues. You know, if you use the proper techniques for managing that information, then the evidence stays usable when you go to court. And chain of custody is a big factor in that. We have to know everybody that's come in contact with the evidence. And again, you know, we use a lot of high-density storage so that we can store a lot more in a smaller space because space costs money. So again, we think about, yes, Katrina.
Sir, I just wanted to add one thing in there and give you a chance to take a breath.
Oh, thank you.
Proper storage in these cases will include narcotics and firearm storage, as well as junior situations. So it's super important to think about what needs to be stored, and what you're seeing here is a high-density storage system, which you may have seen at a library, maybe. This is a very popular and cost-effective way of making sure that you can maximize the amount of storage space in a room by collapsing it and providing essentially only the corridor you need to get in there. But having those separated spaces with different ventilation, particularly for the narcotics, and keeping the firearms separated from everything else, that can really impact how they operate and keep them safe.
How am I doing on time, Jim? Okay. Feeling like I'm going a little long here. All right, who we designed for. This is a little bit different than the diagram we saw for the fire department. We think about the three different populations that use the police facility. It's the public that comes there seeking help. It's the police department and conducting their operations. And it's also those invited guests over in the prisoner area, the police station. And so once again, we want to make sure that we're providing the right environment for interacting with the community. We want to make sure that we're creating a safe environment for officer and detainee inside the prisoner area, and that we're satisfying all the operational needs of the police department. The points where we interact and we separate those three populations are the key to successful police station design. So we did three options. We looked at three different sites and explored the possibilities. There are other possibilities still out there. I'm going to try to move through this reasonably quickly because we got a lot to go through yet. But this is 87 and 0 Brimfield Road, which is right next to the Department of the Highway Department facility. This is a combined public safety facility. You can see it's that. Do I have a mouse? Yeah, there we go. There, it's that L-shaped building over in the corner. You see we have drive-through apparatus bays where we have aprons front and back so that you can have the ability to bring your vehicles onto the site before pulling into the bays. Our police station occurs on the lower level of this bar, and then a lot of our fire office and living spaces occur above that. We've got some public spaces as well as some cruiser parking, and then we have some firefighter responder parking over in the lower corner. We are trying to keep it separated from the Public Works Department. We do know that there's some stockpiles in this area. We're proposing expanding that material storage up on the upper end of that site. I'm not going to go through the entire floor plan here, but suffice it to say that you come into a public vestibule into our lobby. We have a shared training room that both police and fire utilize, and it's available if they want to do meetings with the community. We have some public restrooms associated with that. Our emergency management offices are alongside of it. We have access to the records department and to our admin, which is our main desk. So once again, you know where to come in the building and you know how to get to the services immediately. If you come to the end where the elevator or the stair is, then you can go up to the fire administrative offices. As we head down that secured corridor down here, we go past all of the offices on the left, some conference rooms on the right. We do have an exit out to the back of the building. This second stair here allows firefighters down from the upper floor, and they go through this transition area or from this stair through that transition area so that we get that separation of the environments and be safe inside the building. And as you continue back, you've got your patrol area, sergeants and roll call area. We've got our building mechanical systems tucked in here. And then at the end is our prisoner processing and detention area, as well as our evidence storage. And at the very back is a sally port. The sally port is an old term that comes from castle design. What we talk about when we say sally port in a police department, basically it's a garage where you bring in a cruiser when you have a detainee, and you can transfer the detainee into the police facility with less risk to both officer and detainee. I can tell you stories about departments that don't have those and things that have gone wrong, but suffice it to say it's a safety feature in making sure that you can transfer people inside the building appropriately. And then upstairs, Again, fire administration areas are in the front, so you get up from that stair or that elevator to them. And then we do have bunking facilities, day room, fitness facilities that are shared. Both the kitchen, dining day room, and the fitness are shared by police and fire in this option. So police can come up this stair and get to those facilities. And then in this option, the firearms training simulator is upstairs on the back. This is the upper part of our apparatus space, so this is only one floor. It's a double height space, but you see that mezzanine that Katrina talked about earlier that offers training and storage opportunities. And here is a quick rendering of what that might look like. We did, when we went to our estimators with this, we planned for pre-engineered steel framing for our apparatus space and traditional stick framing for most of our structures. So structurally, this is a reasonably inexpensive kind of structure. I say that with a little twinge in my voice because these days nothing is inexpensive. I can talk about that a little bit later. We also looked at 48 High Street and 100 Maple Street, which is basically right adjacent to the Shepherd Municipal Building, with the possibility of adding in the site of where there was a house that at the time of the study had been the victim of a fire. So we were exploring the possibility of could we do something on the town office's campus. And again, you'll see the similar L-shaped building in this configuration with drive-through apparatus space that lead out to Maple Street, and then parking for firefighters and parking for police staff and cruisers. And then, of course, I did actually add a little bit more parking over around the town offices as well. One of the big things, two big concerns came out of this from the fire department. One is that this apron, you know, you're going through the routes that exist around the existing town offices. A little bit of concern about vehicle congestion and people pulling out of parking spaces. If this direction out to Maple Street is your primary response route, that makes it safer. However, as soon as you get here and turn up the hill, you are going up fairly steep incline for fire trucks. My car goes up it pretty good, but fire trucks weigh a lot more than my car. And so acceleration up an incline is a big issue that we think about with fire apparatus. So we do acknowledge there could be some delay in the response time as they come up to acceleration going uphill. I'm not going to go through the floor plan because it's very similar to the one that we just looked at. So you can think about it as really the same sort of orientation in the floor plan. Same thing upstairs as well, and you'll see that the graphic image is also very similar because it's the same image. The other site that we did look at was Old West Warren Road. That's a field that you see right off of Old West Warren Road. I guess it's being hayed. Is it still being hayed now? You know, this looked like a really great site the first time we drove by it. It does introduce a couple challenges that we had to explore as we looked at this site. And the first one is this big area down here. On the screen, it's a little less blue than it is on my computer screen. But this whole area, where's my mouse? Oh. Is a wetland area. I spent a lovely afternoon walking with a wetland scientist all across this site, and you know, we looked at that whole area and discovered it is in fact a wetland. We haven't flagged it all yet. It did show up on GIS mapping that way, so that the wetland itself needs to be protected, and there are buffer zones around it that need to be protected. What we also discovered that day, which was a surprise to me, was this line that slides down the side of the site, which is a stream. Streams can be a big deal. Waterways can be a big deal because there is a regulation that you can't be within 200 feet of a waterway. You can't disturb that area. However, again, with walking the wetland scientists, we discovered that this is probably a drainage way. It results from drainage upland. It does not come from a wetland, and so it wouldn't qualify for that 200-foot setback, but we still need to protect it when we develop a site. So we came up with, the one last big challenge on this site is there is a significant elevation difference from down on Main Street. Oh, my mouse is back, look at that. I got an extra mouse as well. So from down on Main Street all the way up to Old West Warren Road, we get about 50 feet of elevation climb. It doesn't look like that, does it? When we design for for fire stations, we like to keep our inclines, our slopes for the responding apparatus down around 4% or less. It took a little bit of manipulation to get a location on our site where we could stretch the roadways out to keep them at a 4% incline. We did manage it. We cross over that little stream and come out further out on Main Street to accomplish that. So what happens here is the building sort of steps up the hill. So when I'm in this area where it says 8 spaces, that's actually at the police department entry. So the police department sits here. The fire department sits above it. So our apparatus bays are actually higher than the entrance to our police station. So we're following that slope as we come down the hill. We explored this a lot of different ways. At the end of the day, this was the most optimal arrangement because it preserved some of the spacing that we needed around the wetlands and was able to accommodate our big aprons and apparatus bay up on the back of the site. I am cognizant of residents along the back of the site, so at the very least, if this solution were to be employed, I think the responsible thing would be to provide some buffering along the back of the site. There's a lot of great trees there. I would think that we would need to make sure that we replace a lot of those trees. We had a resident nearby last time. There you go. So same issue still in play here.
You can see my house on the picture.
You're there too?
Oh, that road's a scenic vista. We can't cut trees without permission. They're gonna ruin my tax value by putting that in front of my frickin' house. Swamp.
Again, none of this is being proposed to go forward yet. But I hear what you're saying.
The town own that land?
They do not at this point. They would have to be acquired.
The town owns the other 2 pieces of property?
The town owns the property next to the highway department. The parcel that would adjoin the Shepherd building, they do not own. It would have to be acquired. So again, this floor plan is a little bit different. I'll go through the high level. Main entry lets you into the lobby space. Offices are pretty much in a similar arrangement. There's a little bit of change in how our prisoner area and our evidence area interact. Our firearm simulator is down on the same floor with the police department. The training area is still in play. And then, of course, the access to the stair and elevator to go upstairs to what is now the fire department floor. And then again, administrative offices off on this end, and then the living quarters, and then the shared fitness room, shared day room are still available back here, and they're accessed via these stairs. Again, both stairs go through transition zones, and then the bays are spread out. We did, as a result of things we learned, explore some different options on this floor plan, and ultimately we may alter that floor plan to make sure that we fit appropriately with the site, and I actually have a site plan sketch that shows that. But this was the rendering that was developed, again, just an image of what it might look like. But here's that alternate plan. When we spoke to the Conservation Commission after my wetlands walk, we decided we needed a greater buffer zone at my wetlands area. And in order to do that, we pushed the building a little bit tighter up the hill. We didn't make it closer to the road, but we did push it up higher. We took some of the small vehicles and put them in a smaller garage at a 90-degree angle so that we could eliminate one bay from that. So still some challenges with the topography there that need to be addressed in this design. So I'm going to go quickly through the costing that was done on this so we have an understanding of what these kinds of things look like. We're going to start with what's included in the number. So when we talk about a project cost, there are 3 major pieces that go into developing the project cost. The first one is the construction cost. That's what it costs to actually build the building. That's the site work, it's the bricks and mortars, it's actually building the building. That's the bid number you get on bid day when the project goes out to bid. But that's not the whole expense of building a project, because you also have what we call our project development costs, and that's everything from materials testing to permitting fees to architectural and engineering design fees. It's all of the additional, it's furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, all of those additional costs that it takes to get a project moving. And then the last piece is contingency, because we're always dealing with estimates looking forward into the construction market. You always have a contingency on your projects that allows for any variations in what you find under the ground or what you find during construction. So together, all three of those become the total project cost.
What's the percentage of the growth in the contract?
Excuse me?
What's the percentage of the growth
It's
in the contract?
the growth in the contract? In the contingency? We have a couple different contingencies. There's a 5% construction contingency, and there's a 5% contingency on the development costs, since many of those are estimates at this point. There is also an escalation that's built into the construction cost. So right now, we're in a low escalation period compared to what we had been through. We're seeing in the 4 to 5% construction cost escalation. A few years ago, it was substantially more than that. Does that answer the question? Okay, you bet. So this is the construction, the opinion of probable cost for construction for the full project. If we looked at the 87 and 0 Brimfield Road, so this is the highway department site, construction cost is about $20,571,000. Our project development costs come in at about $3.8 million. Our contingency is about $1.2 million, just a bit over that. So your total opinion of project cost is $25.6 million. And I want to tell you a really brief story here. We did a presentation at the Station Design Conference about, it was a month and a half ago, down in Glendale, Arizona, and our presentation was on what's going on with construction costs. And we did one slide in the presentation that talked about the very first police station that I ever did in my career, which came in at $97 a square foot. And one of my most recent projects over on the near Boston, outside of the Boston area, that came in at about $1,200 a square foot. Most of that escalation happened in two different periods over the last 60 years. The financial crisis around 2008, and then the COVID, the supply chain issues. Most of that escalation came in those two periods. But you think about that, that's a 38 and a half year career. That's a 12-time increase in construction costs. That's terrifying. That is the world that we're bidding in these days. So thinking about how you spend your money is a big deal. Well, my computer is taking a nap. There we go. The next one is 48 High Street. This would be that parcel, a combination parcel of the Shepherd Office Building and that attached residential property. In this case, we got a little bit more site development costs that we have to deal with, a little bit more grading and dealing with an existing structure there. So our construction costs came in at about call it $20.8 million. Our project development costs are a little bit higher at $4.1 million, and the contingency came in at $1.24 million, so you're looking at about $26,132,000, a bit higher than the Brimfield Road site. By the way, these are escalated. You can see there's a note down here. We escalate to the midpoint of construction, so we've assumed that none of these projects would start before March of 27, which is not next March, but the following March, because that's how long it takes to get funding approved and design documents and approvals and all that. So you are picking up a little bit more escalation because of that time period. And then our 0 Old West Warren Road, it has even more site development costs, so its construction cost is $24.6 million. Development costs come in at about $4.8 million. Construction is, the contingency sits closer to 1.5, so you end up looking at a $30,900,000 project on that site. So it's the more expensive. We did consult your assessor's values in case we wanted to liquidate any of the properties. You can see there's a variety of different values that come into play. But the most valuable property here was the town hall site at just shy of 2.4 million. The police station site was at about just shy of 1.3 million. And then your fire station sites came in at call it just over $500,000. So that's assessor information. What you can get in the real estate market is always a different number, but that's essentially where they're valued from the assessor. So with that, Ben, we have gotten to your slides, and I get to sit down, and it's warm. I might take off my jacket if you don't mind.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
How much of that dollar value is going to be put on the taxpayers? $26 million. How much is that?
Yeah, no, the question is how much of that dollar value would end up on the taxpayers? And the answer right now is that the community always has the opportunity to seek available grants. I am not aware of any specific grants that are out there available today. So the answer would be all of it. Yes, sir.
That covered by 2.5.
Your debt override issue? Yes. Yes. Sorry, debt exclusion. I said that wrong. My apologies.
What's wrong with the building the police are in now? What? What's wrong with the building that the police department is in currently?
Yeah, can people use the microphone? Can't hear anything.
What's wrong with the town hall?
Well, from the town hall perspective, we thought there might be an opportunity at the initiation of the study to get an opportunity to get more for the buck, but the town hall is not proposed for renovation in this project now. The question was?
What's wrong with the town hall where the police are located now?
Right now, I'm sorry? Right now, the town hall building that they're in has a lot of challenges from a programmatic standpoint for operating as a police facility. It falls way short on the current code requirements. If we were to renovate it to try to fix those problems, there's a rule in there that if you start to renovate a certain percentage of the building, then you're going to trigger full code compliance of the building, which means that by the time we do that on that particular building, it would cost more to renovate that building than to build a new police station, standalone police station.
How did the building end up in the state that it's in?
Well, a big part of the problem, and I can't answer all of that because I haven't been here for the whole history.
How
but
about somebody from the town explaining how the building got in the condition that it's in? It's because of lack of maintenance. They don't take care of what they already got, and now they want a $30 million complex to run down the tubes? I don't think so. That's not feasible for the town, number one. The numbers are ridiculous. But what you're presenting, it's awesome. I'd love to have that. The police deserve a better place, the fire department does, but we have to be realistic. This town does not take care of anything. Is anybody from
anyone
the
want to
town? I
address
mean,
the
you're not
comment?
from the town. What is your position?
I'm an architect.
You're the architect. I feel like I'm buying a car and you're the salesman. To tell you the truth, you did a good job. Can somebody from the town tell me?
Thanks for using the microphone. Thank you.
So the building really wasn't designed to be a police department. In the years past, when it was being used for that, yes, it was fine to do that, okay? But now, with new technology, being able to store, you have to store evidence. We have firearms that need to be stored because, unfortunately, crimes happen with firearms. So we have to keep that from getting out in the public. Narcotics, okay, whether it's cocaine, fentanyl, or whatever else is taken off the street, has to be stored. It has to be packaged, locked up, okay? All those things have to be taken care of. Training of these police officers, okay? Writing reports, dealing with the public, handling prisoners. Right now, the police department locks prisoners to a bench, okay, right next to a door. All right, that's not very safe for the person being locked up there, being arrested, or the public, because if that person gets away or has to use a restroom, it makes a lot of a situation, okay?
Do we
It's
not
not
bring
something we want to be
prisoners-
dealing
Don't we
with.
bring prisoners out of town to keep them?
Where are we going to bring them?
To the state police usually.
The state police can't handle this stuff either. They're a very small department. It's a very old building also.
What have we been doing all this time with the prisoners?
We've been locking them to a bench and holding them until they
Yeah, I've been there on that
transported-
bench. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's probably not a very comfortable bench to sit on.
I don't think we're looking to make prisoners comfortable.
No,
What we're
but-
trying to do is get a police station for the police department to be in that's feasible.
Right. And that's
And
what
the
we're
town,
trying
but
to do.
excuse me, I asked a question about how this building ended up in a condition it's in. Age got nothing to do with it. Do you know how old the White House is? It's
Okay.
beautiful, nice condition.
So,
They maintained it.
can I answer the question, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So over the years, the building has been neglected, okay? We all know that. We experienced that. When we first took over for the select board, one of the things we did is inspect all the buildings in the town. We reviewed everything that's wrong with them. We went through with, our custodian, our maintenance guy, Mr. Jim Dusty, who is here also, and we identified issues with these buildings. We talked to anybody that's occupying the buildings, whether it's the highway department or the water department, well, not the sewer department. Sorry, water department's not our building. The sewer department, the police department, the fire departments, both Station A, Station B, we've been into all those. I've been into every single part of the old town hall, the current police department, okay? I've been everywhere in the basement, in all the little crawl spaces in the basement, and all the way up in the attic where the beams are still scorched from the fire, okay? I've seen all of it. There's old wiring in there, all right? There's, it's just bad. It's a 200-year-old building, okay? For us to upgrade that building, it's going to trigger new building requirements, okay? Because now we have to put an elevator in the building. We have to abate all the asbestos. We have to remove all the lead. We have to remove all the, basically anything that's hazardous in the building out of there. Redo all the plumbing. It's just so much. By the time we looked at it, just to make it an office building again, it was something around $16 million. Just to
what are
make
they
it,
gonna
just to
do?
make it the way it is now.
What are they going to do with that building if they put a
we do
police
one at a
department
time?
up? What are they going to do with the town hall, where the police department are now? What are they
So
going to do with that
that
building?
is up to the public. Okay, all we can do is make recommendations here as a board. That's why we're here now. We're making recommendations and saying, hey, this is a problem. We need to fix it. We're bringing it to the public and explaining to you the problem we have and how to fix it. Whether the public chooses not to fix it, that's up to you. Someday, it's going to have to be dealt with.
It's going to fall down. It's right downtown.
So I've been in that building, okay, and I'll take anybody that wants to take a tour of that building in that building. I'll walk you through that building. I've been in there. When they moved that river through that the side of the building there, all that moisture in the water is permeating inside the building now, okay? The basement is very moist, all right? the brickwork down in the basement, all the mortar. We've got pictures and videos of us touching the mortar, and it just crumbles to dust. All right? Same with the brickwork. The building is in very bad shape. Anything we do, if we try to put some serious money into it, it triggers where we have to do everything. So we have to redo all the electrical work, we have to do all the plumbing, we had to get all the hazardous material. So it triggers the $17 million that we'd have to dump into that building. And along with putting an elevator in there, because now we have to make it ADA compliant. Okay, so that's why it's not really an option. And it's still not a police department. After doing all that to the building, it still wouldn't be a police department.
So all of this compliance stuff is for the state of Massachusetts?
It's federal government, the state of Massachusetts, it's NFPA standards.
How much of it is the BS from Massachusetts that's overwhelming us?
Again,
A lot of it's unnecessary. We all know that.
We don't make
They
those
do it.
laws, we just got to comply with them.
Well, let the governor pitch the money into the poor little town of Warren instead of giving it to all the illegals housing it for $60 million.
So
How about we get some of that money?
So we've tried to get grants. We've looked at grants. Our town aggressively gets grants. We're always trying to find some money from somewhere to be able to pay for projects. And we do a lot of them. Sometimes when we ask you people for money in town meetings, a lot of times we give that back, you know, because we get a grant for it. Mr. Farrar has done an amazing job over the years that he's been working with us, getting grants and finding different federal opportunities to be able to take care of these projects. So we don't have to put it on the burden of the residents. Unfortunately, nobody cares about public safety. Okay,
Oh,
to be a
that's not
fact.
true. I'd like
Okay,
to ask you why we don't.
do.
Do we have a
because we live
paramedic in
here.
town?
Okay, we live
Do we
here.
have a paramedic in town?
What's that?
Do we have a paramedic in town?
We have EMTs.
No, I know we got EMTs. Why do
paramedic
we
is
not
a
have a
different standard.
paramedic? Because we couldn't afford them, is what I was told. I may have been misinformed.
That's something the chief could probably answer better for you.
I think a paramedic is way more important than a big fancy building to sit in.
Again,
Don't you?
that's up for the chief to answer.
We have to call another town. We got to have 2 ambulances. Go ahead.
Okay, so just, again, a couple things here, just to not lose focus on here, because I want to keep everything civil tonight. There's no reason to be arguing back and forth. We'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Again, so part of, just so everyone understands, part of this study was to align us with potential grants down the road. If we don't have a study like this done, a feasibility study, other towns that have done this are going to capitalize on grants because we didn't do it, okay? So that's another huge reason why we participated in this study, just so everybody understands. Here in Warren, we run a municipal ambulance, okay? Some towns have a municipal ambulance, some towns have private ambulance. Right now, we have a municipal ambulance. We run at a basic level service, which means we have EMTs. For certain calls, roughly 20% of the calls that we do, we may be required to call for a paramedic depending on what the severity of that patient's whatever their medical issue might be, okay? And that's why there are some times where you'll see an ambulance from another town come in so we can have a paramedic jump on for that, okay? We still bill for the call, we still do all that. I would love to have a paramedic service here, but it costs a ton of money to do so. I'd be more than happy to look at those options, and I've already had these conversations behind the scenes. There are certainly things that we can do, okay? We had a paramedic program here. We once did, all right? We had one full-time paramedic. That paramedic worked for about $30,000 a year. The average salary for a paramedic now, and they are very well sought after, are between $75,000 and $80,000. So in order to implement that program, we'd have to update all of our people to that school, hire more, all right? It'd be extremely costly to the town. We could look at expanding our service, which is what I would suggest that we do at an upcoming town meeting where we have a paramedic fly car that comes in, and that would be a way to combat that. Of course, we'd love to provide that. We have a great service. I have great people that are very well trained, all right? And we can handle any emergency because we have protocols to do that. However, for the patient's best outcome, we will call for a paramedic. But again, that paramedic that we had many years ago worked for almost nothing compared to what that salary should have been. She got hurt on the job, she had to retire medically, and the town dissolved the position. That's what happened. okay? Ever since then, we have run at that BLS level, all right? And we do the very best we can. We do a ton of medical director options that other towns don't do. We give medications that most EMTs aren't allowed to give because we have had those trainings. So to your question, certainly we would love to provide that service, but that is why we still have a paramedic come in from time to time on certain calls.
But we don't have a full-time paramedic.
We do not.
Can't afford it.
Well, we don't have a full-time paramedic because the town chose to dissolve that at that time many years ago, and they did not fill the position.
There was a reason why? From what I understand, they don't want to pay a paramedic.
Well, I mean, it's an extreme cost.
It
Again,
is.
but again, this is a thing outside of the scope that we're talking about
So,
tonight.
yeah, we're getting off subject there.
If the town would like to explore that, I'll be more than happy to, have all those conversations in the world, but this is something outside of this
Well, I'd rather
topic.
pay for your paramedic than a fancy building for everybody to be in. I know we need them, and the
Yeah.
facilities are needed. It sucks where you guys are. I've been there.
Excuse me, can we finish the presentation, get all of the info, we can hash the rest of this out after?
Well, I want to answer that question.
You gentlemen all set?
No, I have a question. Are these costs, do we have anything in here about what we're going to do with the old buildings?
Yeah, we just went over that.
Yeah,
If
we
we
just had a s-
liquidate the buildings and get rid of the buildings, there is an estimate broken down on what their
So that's the-
approximate
that would the
value could
plan.
be.
That would be the plan.
That's up to all of you.
Well-
So again, we can't just say arbitrarily say, okay, we're gonna sell the Shepherd building now. Okay,
No,
it
but-
goes to
no, but
town
you
vote.
just talked about how bad the police station is, and
Yes.
I know it's a shithole, I get it.
Yep.
But, I mean, as soon as somebody leaves that building and it's empty, it's gonna go to hell even faster.
We still have to maintain it.
Well, that's my thing.
To a minimum
That's an
standard.
additional cost that that I don't think is being captured, is it? And if it is, where is it being captured?
You're correct. The continued maintenance cost of that building is not included in these numbers. You are correct.
Okay.
We'd still have to maintain that building for as long as the town wants to keep it. Okay,
And
just
the-
like any other property that we have.
And this proposal doesn't say we decided, like the town decided, like we don't want to keep the building. It doesn't take in any demolition costs, is that?
That's correct. We were asked at the time to come up with what the value of the buildings were, so we consulted the assessor's records to establish what the current assessment is on those. That's the information that we have on those buildings at this time, whether they will be disposed of or demolished or resold, that was not a part of our work, so.
One option we have with the old town hall would be to either lease it or sell it for, lease it or sell it for a low amount of money, to have somebody come in and do something with the building, develop it, put an art center in there, put a restaurant in there. There's a lot of things. Well, that would be part of the sale. If you sell it to a developer for $1 and say, here it is, keep the historical characteristics, but fix it up and put a business in there. So that could be one option, as opposed to just demolishing it.
Hello, I'm a historian, and one of the things I had thought about is it's very expensive to redo that building. We can't afford it. But what if we put it to a vote? If we can't fix it, it's not worth anything. If we can't sell it, it's not worth anything. What if we had an architectural reclamation company come in? They don't make the brick that building's made. It's worth a lot of money. Why don't we have them come in, make an offer? There's many different companies you could ask to come in, and they would buy every part of that building and take it down.
There's some really nice wood inside, the bricks. I mean, yeah,
Then we
absolutely.
could take the money, right, and put it towards a public safety complex, and that would be less money on the taxpayers that we'd have to pay.
Yeah, and you could take that space and turn it into a parking
Right,
lot or
you could,
a park.
you could put a Moe's, I don't know, do whatever you want with it, put a Starbucks, whatever you want to do.
Yep.
But why don't we make some money for the town rather than having an arbitrary building? And I'm a historian, I love history, that's great. But if it's sitting there rotting, it's not useful history.
Yeah, I think if this went ahead and the police left, then that would be the next conversation, is
That would
what
be-
do we do with that building? Get rid of it, sell it?
But maybe
Like you're
ta-
suggesting, salvage it?
Right, maybe
you know.
taxpayers would be more willing if they saw that we had something to really put towards a safety complex that wouldn't be so costly on their taxes. I understand. We had an $800 overage last year because someone built 4 houses next to our house. Our taxes have gone up arbitrarily every year since 2005. I've lived in town my whole life, but since we bought the house, I totally think that the police and fire department are worthy to have what they need for public safety. I want them to be safe. I want them to be able to operate, and I want us to have something we're proud of. But let's see if we can have a solution where we're making money to go towards this. If we can't get grants, let's find a way to make money. That's all.
Thank you.
So,
Just a quick clarification. I understand and agree that the paramedic question is for another time and place and whatnot. But why is the Shepherd Building listed in this slide?
only because when we originally started the study, it was added into consideration to see if there was an advantage of combining the projects together. Early on in the process, the decision was made, no, there is no advantage to that.
So just for everyone looking at this, I want to be clear, that last line on there for
It's not in play,
2.367 should have been removed from this slide. Is that right or not?
Well, it was work that we assembled,
Yeah.
but it,
But at this
my-
point, the municipal building was not
Is
being
off the
considered
table.
any further. I just wanted
That's
everyone to
correct.
know that.
That's correct,
And
and that is
so,
identified in the
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be off the table.
That would be off the
executive
table.
summary of my
All
report.
right, thank you, thank you.
So with that, Ben, Ben, let's get through the last of this.
I just want to, just because it's super important to what you're talking about. I love the buildings. We need this, 100%. We need something like this. The problem is, if you need to go to the police department for something, since we lost our dispatch, which in my opinion, that's the destruction of the local community, is losing your own dispatch center. When you call 911, they have to ask what town you're in. We don't have anyone at the door when you go to the police department. There's no, I mean, I love the idea of going in there and being able to ask for records and renew your pistol permit. You know, for any of you who've tried to renew a pistol permit, I'm a licensed instructor from the NRA, by the way. The state is losing people's paperwork for renewing just your pistol permit at a record that no one's ever seen. But we can't go to the police department. I'm trying to renew mine now. I stop in every day, see if she's in there. She's not. I feel bad, and I leave. The building you're describing is beautiful, with the front entryway and a place to go get records and somebody to talk to and a place to sit down. Right now, we have such a small police force. If you had to speak to someone, they have to pull that officer off the street. And you have to wait, if they can even get someone. And that all comes from town budgeting and spending money where it's needed. If we can't even have a secretarial person full-time in the lobby to be there if there was an emergency or if you need to get a record, now you're going to build a building and pay for offices and all this stuff where it's going to sit empty because there's no one to sit there because either we can't afford it or we haven't budgeted for that person to be there in the building. I mean, that's just one simple person in that lobby who plays a huge integral part in the utilization of the entire police force. And we don't have it now. And there's no plans, and I'm not putting the town on the spot for this, but I don't see a plan to put a person in there full-time to do it, whether for us or the fire department. We have an awesome town with great people, and our volunteer fire department is incredible. My family was on it years ago. These guys kick ass, and it's very tough to do that with the split towns and the 2 different fire departments. I agree, it's all bad. We need to do something. But when you're designing a building with extra rooms for somebody who's going to take paperwork or applications, and that person doesn't exist, and there are no plans for them to exist, it really makes us out here who are paying our taxes and just trying to survive every day thinking, we're going to pay for all these rooms, and there's nobody there who can use them, and we're not going to pay for anybody to do it. You know, and it becomes a real problem. So your building designs are gorgeous. They're just way more than this town will ever need. That's all.
So Ben, you ready?
What's that Maple
sorry?
This is a curiosity. I just wondered what the Maple Street location is.
Where are you talking about? There's a sheet later on.
I have a question to you or to you. Could you tell me the exact population of this town?
Just under 5,000.
Yeah, so it's 4,000 something, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, my next question is, look around you. How many retired people do we have in this town? Probably 2,000, maybe 3, okay? Now you want these people to pay a lot more taxes. You're gonna drive them right out of this town. I'm telling you, this is what's gonna happen. You can't see that? If we need a police station, let's get the police station, because I hear that that's what we need. Then we'll build a police station. But you're gonna have to wait for the other stuff. Why not build a police station and then we'll add on to it as we go? Don't try to do everything at once. We're trying to get it big. We're only a 4,000 people population in this town. What about getting West Brookfield involved? We got involved in this school. What's wrong with West Brookfield? They got the same problems we got. Brimfield's got the same problems. Look around. You guys can't see that there's all these little towns around. They got the same problems that you're telling us we got.
Okay, so this is the feedback we're looking for. We did this study to look at what is possible, what would it look like, where would it go, what would it cost, right? And then you can start from the top and start to work down. So with your feedback in these meetings, yes, we wish there were more people here too. We take this information and then we'll figure out, okay, you know, this is the top of the pie, what's next down, what's next down.
So when do you plan on voting on this?
There's no plan to vote on anything right now. This is still discussion, input, exploration. There's no plan. It's not going to be on a special. Maybe it would be next year, but we have to get a little further in the decision making. And this is why we're here, to listen to you and listen to these concerns and ideas, what this is going to be, what we're going to do with the old town hall, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Oglesby. I'm with Unibank. I'm the town's financial advisor. And I just wanted to kind of go over a couple of really high-level tax impact analysis. As you know, whenever a community does a project like this, they have to borrow some money, at least. Depending, you know, obviously grants will play a role, but we ran some very generic analysis for you to kind of show you tax impact based on current market situations and current valuations. So what I'll do is I'll go through this real quick. So the first one we looked at, just so you know, under Mass General Law, you can actually finance these projects for up to 30 years, okay? But I'm gonna show you first a 20-year and then a 25-year, okay? So you can go longer than what I'm showing you, but just to kind of set the table. So we looked at a 20-year, just a $30 million bond issue. And based on current interest rates in the marketplace, we assumed a 3.5% interest rate. That's a tax-exempt interest rate that communities, state and local governments are able to issue tax-exempt debt. So 3.5% is a reasonable interest rate assumption. We then took the current town's assessed valuation, which is about $578 million, and we assumed a typical single-family home value of $290,000. I know, yeah, it can vary, but you have to kind of assume a median or an average value. And importantly, we assume no future growth, okay? It's realistic to expect growth, but for these types of analytical purposes, we don't like to project any growth in the future. So if you do get growth, obviously that reduces the burden, okay? So if you were to issue that 20-year bond for $30 million at a 3.5% interest rate, the principal and interest payments every year would be about $2.1 million. And on a per $100,000 basis, so if you don't have a $290,000 house, the per $100,000 annual impact, annual, not monthly, but annual, would be about $365 a year per 100,000, okay? If you took that $290,000 typical house, it'd be, and do the math, it's about $1,060 a year is the tax impact, assuming $30 million, assuming no grants, okay? And that would be level for the entire 20-year period, just like a mortgage payment, okay? That's level debt service, which is the easiest way to talk about this in public. There's another way a town can finance things where they pay the debt a little more aggressively, and in that case, on the right-hand side with what we call equal principal structure, the payment starts high, and at the end it's lower. So you'll notice in the first year, the principal and interest payment is about $2.55 million, and in the last year, it's about $1.55 million. That's a more aggressive way to pay off the debt. Typically for projects like this, we see communities generally go with the level debt service because it's easier to plan for 20 years with a level debt payment, just like a mortgage payment, okay? So that's the 20-year financing. If we were to look at, see if I can do this. Yeah, do the next slide. Oh, thank you. Okay, here's the 25-year analysis. So same assessed valuation, same assumption about the home value, but in this case, we're issuing for 25 years, the same $30 million, and because we're going longer on the term, we increase the interest rate assumption to 3.75. Again, that's kind of based on current market conditions. In that case, over that 25-year period, the principal and interest payments every year are going to be a little under $1.9 million, all the way from year 1 to year 25. The per $100,000 number per year is about $323, $324 a year per 100,000. For that $290,000 assumed typical home value, it's $938 a year would be the tax impact. Again, we're not assuming any future growth. We're just assuming that the valuation of the town stays steady. Okay, that's the most conservative way to analyze these things. Again, if you went over to the equal principal structure, the payment would start at $2.3 million in year 1. By year 25, you're at about $1,245,000. So you're more aggressively paying principal. Over time, the town's better off if they do the equal principal, because if you look at the very bottom, the total payback is lower with the equal principal structure. But I think for planning purposes of what we're talking about, the level debt service is the better way to look at this as far as just kind of planning out, because it's just easier to grasp the numbers. Oh, we did do a 30-year, excuse me, I didn't know we had that on there. Okay, we also, this is the maximum we can go. State of Massachusetts allows a town or city to borrow for up to 30 years for a project like this. Not necessarily recommend that, but it is an option. So if we did a 30-year financing, same basic assumptions all over again, we jump the interest rate to 4%. And in that case, the annual principal and interest payments will be about $1,735,000 a year for the whole 30-year period. That works out to about $300 per 100,000 of value. That's pretty easy to get the math. So if you have a $500,000 house, multiply 300 times 5, that's your annual tax impact, okay? And for that $290,000 assumed typical home value for Warren, $871 would be the number per year, okay? So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of what the tax impact would be if the town borrowed the full $30 million all at one time. And let me see, I think we have another one here.
That's just a cheat sheet.
Okay, there's a kind of a summary for you. All right. So again, for those of you who don't have that $290,000 house, hopefully one of these values on the left Well, you can kind of take a number and either multiply it times 2 or divide it by 2, whichever is appropriate in your case. And you can see kind of what again, these are not monthly numbers, these are annual numbers. And so for instance, for a $350,000 house, if we financed it over 30 years, the tax impact on an annual basis will be about $1,050. So divide $1,050 by 12, and that's your monthly impact for a project like this. All right, thank you.
Sorry, I have a question directed to you. So that was the breakdown for 20, 25, and 30. And I'm assuming within those 20, 25, 30 years, you're also going to be asking for a new school, a new elementary school, and other things that you're expecting us to pay. Is that correct? Because this is just one piece of the whole town.
We've got a new school.
But in 20 to 25 years, you could be asking for another one, is my point, in 10 years from now.
So there could be other capital projects that come up as we continue to grow as a town, as maintenance issues come up, other things could need to be addressed.
Can you share what's on your radar for the next 10 years that you have in mind?
We don't have a new school, I can tell you that, in mind, but, you know, there could be a new roof needed at a location. There could be investments to the building, windows.
New fire trucks?
There could be new fire
With
trucks.
the new bays, will we need new trucks to fit in those bays?
We've been planning for new fire trucks. We have a capital plan, a 5-year capital plan that goes out and looks at you know, that type of capital investment. We put money aside for that. We have money aside for a new ambulance. We're continuing to improve these things. Before, this town never had a capital plan. We have a capital plan. We're putting money aside for that. We're moving this town in a modern direction.
And does that also mean bringing things in to town?
I'm sorry? What's that?
Like businesses into town?
Of course. We're continuing to look at business development. Wrights Mills, that master recovery plan was just released last month. We're going to continue to look to attract businesses in new tax base to this town. As the town continues to grow, more houses, more jobs for local residents. You know, we're trying to create more economic development opportunities.
Because when you look around this room, and I'm including myself, so I don't want to offend anybody, but 20 years, I'm probably not going to be here. Not even just in this town, just underneath the dirt, not on top of it.
Wow.
So when you look around at the population of this town, many are going to be in that same situation. And again, not to offend anybody. So the town population is more likely going to go down than it is to go up without serious growth in this town. And there are things like a new elementary school and other things that are going to come up in the next 10 to 15 years that are also going to need to be addressed while adding to the tax burdens that we already have. So I'm just asking that you holistically look at what needs to be brought into this town, not just what you're asking for us to pay for.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll try to buzz through this so we can get to any other questions here, but you know, we did a little bit of a what if. We did this last time, so we wanted to revisit it. But you know, the question is, what if the police station is built now and nothing else right now? And then what if the fire station was built now and not the police station? And what if the police station was built now and then the fire station is built 18 months later? And then, of course, you know, there's always the question of what if you do nothing? So if we did 2 scenarios on the police station, and again, we assumed, for the sake of argument, that it would go on the 48 High Street, 100 Maple Street. It could easily go on the Brimfield site. Not a significant difference for this building, but at 10,660 square feet, we're looking at about an $8.558 million construction cost with about 1.8 in development and just over $500,000 in contingency. So you'd be looking at almost 10.9 million for police station only as it's programmed right now. We also looked if you did say, for instance, keep the firearms simulator in the town hall where it is currently, that'll take you down a little bit. Your construction cost goes down to about 7.9. Your development costs go to about 1.7. Your construction contingency drops below $500,000, and you end up just 10.1 million, just slightly over $10 million. So that's if you looked at the police station as it's programmed right now. One of the things that Jim and I talked about earlier is, could we look at changing the program? And I think, yes, the answer is always yes. You can always make decisions about, do we not build this piece today and save it for tomorrow? The thing that I would, I think the answer is absolutely yes. The thing I always caution people about is that we know that construction costs have continued to rise for the last 60 years. It does mean if you add on later, then it's going to cost a little bit more than it would cost today. However, if that's what makes sense for your budget, I get it. I do the same thing at my own home. I decide what I'm doing today and what I'm doing tomorrow. Likewise, if you broke out the fire station only, excluded the police station, we'd be looking at about $16,670,000. I'm sorry, I just gave you the square footage. 13.4 million for construction cost, 2.6 for project development costs, and about 800,000 for contingency, so 16,809,000. If you built police today, and then 18 months later, which is a short time later, you built the fire station, what we did is we put that extra 18 months of escalation into the construction cost, and you find that, so if you did police today and fire station in 18 months, it would cost you about $28,247,000, whereas the public safety on Brimfield Road is estimated at $25,637,000. So you see that escalation does build up. I will say that the last time we plugged these numbers in, we were seeing something in the neighborhood of 6 to 7% escalation rate. That has fallen. We're hearing 4 to 5% right now. So I don't know if that's going to continue to drop or if it'll turn around at some point. But so this number might be a little bit on the high side for build one now, build one later. And again, that's without changing the programs. And then we went through this last time because we have, I think, still a lot of questions. I'm going to keep this really high level. I did, from an architect's perspective, a little matrix about trying to figure out what's good about the various sites. They both have, they all three have pros and cons. Some of them impact cost and some of them impact ease of development. But having said that, these are sort of the subjective criteria. This is your community, and your objective criteria matters. And we've heard a lot of objective criteria today about what's really affordable, and I think that matters too. So, I think the decision of what is moving forward on what site is something that's yet to come. So we do have, as Jim stated at the beginning, another community conversation on the 27th of September at 1 o'clock at the Shepherd Municipal Building. The select board needs to decide on a direction at some point in the future. And then at some point beyond that, there will be a future town meeting, but there's nothing on the ballot for this project. We are still learning from you. And with that, if there's any further questions, I think we can open the floor back up for that.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you. My name is Rich Saporowski, and first thing I want to say is thank you, Chief. And I would say the same to the police chief. Thank you. You guys do a great job. You need something. That ain't it. That's too grandiose. Honestly, I mean, we have 10 police officers. If the entire fire on-call is in, that's 30 people. You've got parking spaces for over 50. I think we need to downsize this thing. You showed the Lexington slide. They've got 34,000 people in population. We got less than 5,000. I agree, we need to do something, but that's just too much. It's too big. You wouldn't have people in it. I mean, so we have 10 police officers. I'm assuming their shifts. I don't know how they rotate, but what is it, 3 on at a time, of which they're probably not even in the building. Do we need a fitness center? Can we go back to a slide real quick? I mean, do we need all this stuff? And I guess my big concern on this one is that the only design options that you guys have to choose from? Are those three?
Well, those are the sites that we looked at. Again, with the study,
okay, so
we tried to narrow it down.
So the sites. Yeah, I think we need more room, but I've been in your fire department, and I'm walking like this. I get it.
So
But-
I'll say one of the things we looked at here is instead of doing, we have a Milo training room that's currently in the Shepherd Building. That is, what did we figure, how many square feet was that?
750.
750 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So the plans have that room going into a new facility.
Okay.
So what we
So
looked at
1,200
hold on. What
I'm
we
sorry,
looked
so
at recently
1,200
was
at
leaving.
$1,200 a square foot, take it out.
I know, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah, let me get there. So that's what we looked at. Okay, what if we left the Milo room in the Shepherd Building?
Mm-hmm.
It's not used every day. It's going to be used periodically through the year. So that shaves off $750,000, $800,000
Yeah, about 800,000.
$1,000 from the cost. So again, we're starting up here, and then we can work our way down. What are our other options? And there's the Milo training room right there, almost $1 million off the price. So it's part of the conversation. It's getting input, it's hearing from people, it's taking these plans and saying, okay, what if we do this and this? Maybe we can save a little bit here and there. So it's a process. We're not trying to shove this down your throat. We're trying to say,
Not
here's a
taking it that way.
possibility. Here's 3 possibilities, reasonable sites, but they all come with pluses and minuses.
Right.
So
I think that the prudent thing to do would be, and you would know this better than anyone probably in this room, is what room do we need? I mean, I'm looking right now at roll call. Once again, this would be for the police department roll call, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, there's 9 guys, 3 shifts, 3 guys. Do we need a room for that?
Yeah, and this room still does a multifunction task. In the slides I showed you before, we talked about separating report prep and roll call and training. This one does not have training in it because we have the separate training room, but it does still have report prep and roll call, which basically happens around a conference room table for your police department. So it's a much smaller space.
My fear is that we're going to show something like this and we're going to get nothing. The townspeople are going to look, and again, I would say from the people I've talked to, everyone agrees something has to happen. But it can't be something that I'm not going to say can't afford, but can't justify. I don't think we can justify all this space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the second floor, the second level. I don't know, I've never seen it, but do we have sleeping quarters now for people? Do we need sleeping quarters for people? I mean, honestly, it might be nice, but do you need it? Are you suffering without it? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm saying in general, can we go through these plans and just say, look, we need it, we want it, or we need it?
So if we're trying to build for 75 years in the future too, right? So if we don't do some of this stuff and the town grows, say something goes into rights, say something happens with the land on the west side of town, and now we need 20 firefighters to support that, and we haven't built to to some capacity, then we're going to have to build again, or we're going to have to add on to a building 15 years from now, and at what cost?
But if
So-
something goes into rights, you just increase your tax base.
Yeah, then we're
Well,
going
no,
to pay
you
for it
did. Now,
again.
see, the
Yeah.
issue is that you're asking for 99% of this to be paid for by homeowners. And that's why I'm saying I agree. Chief,
And
you
I'll-
need something. I get it.
And I'll say this too, if we had growth, then those loan payments per household would also go down too. You're
But,
three,
but that's a big if.
well, all these are
No,
ifs.
you're right,
And
but
we're
that's
working-
a big if.
I can't tell you how hard we're trying to get something going on in town.
I guess-
Something with rights, something with the land on the edge of town.
And I don't want to stay at the mic any much longer, but I guess my point is really simple. I'll go back and I'll say it. If you want the townspeople to do it, you got to make it simpler. Right now, it's too expensive, and I look at it and I go, why do we need a fitness room? It'd be nice, but do we need one? I mean, I just think there could be dollars taken out, and at $1,200 a square foot, good Lord, a closet's $5,000. I'll stop with that.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And, yeah.
Just to comment on that real quick. So again, this building is designed for 50 to 75 years worth of usage here. Currently, we have about 5,000 people in town. At the last meeting we did this, that question came up. Well, why does, the town's population hasn't gone up, so why do you guys need this? And the fact of the matter is that it's true, okay? Our population hasn't gone up. However, our call volume has tremendously. Okay, so the population that lives in town now is calling us on average of 12 to 15% more every single year. All right, so that is putting more strain and it's requiring more staffing. So this idea here, okay, is taking it to the next step in the sense that right now we staff a couple of full-time firefighters at the station from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. each night, okay, or each day. We do not have anyone at the station overnight because we don't have places for them to sleep. We currently don't run 24-hour shifts. Most modern fire departments do at this point. It's very advantageous in the industry for firefighters working 24-hour shifts. They have to be able to sleep at some point. We can't do that. So this design, certainly we could cut it down to 2, but we're going to eventually need a place to sleep our firefighters. Just the amount of natural storms and stuff that we've had over the last decade, in the last 5 years, we're going to more and more of these incidents, bad storms and stuff all the time. They happen overnight. We're going to have to sleep some firefighters there eventually. We have no choice but to make that decision at some point. So this is, again, expanding, and if the town wants to add to our services with a paramedic program or additional staffing come down the road, and we start going around the clock, that's a reality for us, all right? We're facing more and more calls for service every single year. Our call volume from 2024 to this year, 2023 to 2024, went up by, I believe, 14%. Okay, on top of, and it's been consistent over and over again. So we're trying to adapt to that change. And eventually, if you call for the ambulance overnight, the responders have to respond from home. If it's a snowstorm, it could take them 10, 15 minutes to get to the station and then another 10 minutes to the outskirts of town. So it's all about what you as taxpayers want to do. But again, this is a modern station that will allow us some sleeping quarters to eventually add to that service, because I don't see those numbers going down anytime soon, but just to answer your question. Yep, no, I get it, I understand it. Again, this was the study and the scope of work behind it. We certainly are not here trying to, in any way, shape, or form, burden the taxpayers. We understand it falls I'm a homeowner, I live in town. Okay, I pay taxes just like every single person. This is my 13th year, just finishing my 13th year as the fire chief. I love my job. I love the people here, all right? And we always try to be fair. To answer the young lady's question, comments up here, I would never, ever come to this town and say to you, oh, I forgot to tell you this year, I need $1 million fire truck. Sorry about that, okay? That's not the way that we operate. We have a capital planning. Even before the town did capital planning, we did capital planning, okay? We have a schedule as to when we replace our apparatus, how often we replace our apparatus. We plan for our projects 3 to 5 to 6 years in advance. 50,000 this year, 150,000 the next year. We would never come to you and say, we're going to bankrupt you tomorrow because we want a shiny fire truck. The stuff that we have is what we need. However, it may not reflect the apparatus fleet that we may have in 50 years. We don't have a ladder truck because we can't fit a ladder truck, all right? If something happens at Wrights, that's a conversation we may have to add that apparatus to our fleet. But again, these are numbers based on what we currently have and where I see the direction and the call volume of the fire department, going. And certainly, there are other options, okay? I've already talked to Mr. Ferrera about some other, potentially adding on to Station A. Can we do that? Can we put bays where the basketball court is? What can we do that the town could afford? So we are looking at those options behind the scenes. I don't want you to think that this is the pigeonholed, that this is all that's there. We are absolutely looking at these other options, and I absolutely appreciate everybody that came tonight because this is the most people I've seen in a meeting in a while, and that's really very refreshing, to be honest, to have that participation. So thank you.
I think I just broke a chair. My name is Jim Dusty, by the way. I think everybody should introduce themselves when they come up from now on. Just nice to know who they are. And I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. We had a lot of good suggestions, good questions were asked, opinions were offered, and everyone has a valid point of view. I'd like to just point out a few things from my experience. The gentleman that came up here and wanted to know why the old town hall was in such rough shape. Well, it's because over the years, many, many years, repairs had to be made and the town wouldn't pay for them. The selectmen don't pay for these things out of their own money. Towns have to approve expenditures for improvements. So that's a major reason why the old town hall is actually a condemned building. I was involved in hiring a forensic architectural and engineering firm who specialized in these types of buildings. And they came up with a report right from the basement all the way up to the roof. The price then, 4 years ago, was $8 million. It's probably $16 million now. And then if that were to happen, you still don't have a police station, as David Dufresne said. That's not a viable solution. It really and truly isn't. The Shepherd Building, by the way, I was a custodian for a number of years here, as well as I'm still a member of the fire department. I'm the chaplain with the fire and police, and now the town, I guess, which is a great honor. But let me just tell you that when I first came into the Shepherd Building, 8 urinals didn't work. The toilets were plugged. The sills all around the windows were all rotted out. There was lead, there's mold. What else can I say? The floors were warped. It was a disaster. There was one room we called the boxing room that was an old boxing ring down there for years. It was full of mold. It was soaking wet. We had to spend a lot of money. The town had to spend money just to get the hazardous materials out of it. All because the town, the voters of this town would not approve preventive maintenance. It's very simple. You have to have preventive maintenance. Now, flash forward to now. We need a new police department. Absolutely need it. The fire department, by the way, Chief Lavoie and Chief Millette are number one. They're professional, they're intelligent, they're educated, they care about the town. And what they want, I trust them that they're doing it to improve the town. A new police fire station would be a beacon of attractiveness to this town. Let's not forget that part. People ride through this town and they see buildings collapsed, buildings half burnt down. They see this old police station In the old fire station A and B, I mean, you can't not spend money. If we don't do something now with not just police and fire, but whatever else needs to be done to keep our town in good shape, to keep our real estate in good shape. Great example, the senior center. The selectman and Jim Ferrara evaluated the needs in that building. And that building is the best piece of real estate that the town owns right now. New heating system, new roof, new siding, new kitchen equipment. It's beautiful for the elderly, but it cost money. And our Mr. Ferrara here came up with grant money for all of this, and there were other resources, and God bless him, I'll tell you. And the same thing with the selectmen. So you got a fire chief, a police chief, 3 hardworking selectmen, and a town manager that really care about this town. Now, is it going to cost money to build a fire station and a police station? Yes. My wife doesn't want to vote for a combined, sorry, honey, but I do. And we're on fixed incomes. She just retired. Well, next week she's all done. She can join me. And we're on a fixed income, but we recognize how important it is for this town to go forward, not backward. You have a great resource in rights. Who wants to come into this town, if they were sitting in these meetings where hardly anybody shows up, who's going to have the confidence to do anything with this town, to bring a business into the town, to buy real estate in this town, to buy a home in this town? You have to spend money. You have to. And Mr. Ferrara has improved our finances and our bond rating for what I understand is one of the best in the entire state. I mean, it's incredible. We have to act now. All that being said, I do not believe if we put this program, one of the 3 locations, up for a vote, and it's not happening, by the way, we're not done yet, okay? But if you put it up for a vote now, it's not going to pass. And what really fears me is if you put a combined vote in the police station, it never gets built. That can't happen, okay? So, but I charge you, Chief Millette, you 3 selectmen, and our manager, okay, to fix this disparity because it's all about cost. You did a great job presenting the architectural aspects, the facts and figures, what a normal police department needs, what a fire department needs. I think we're all beyond that. We know this, okay? Thank you. But right now, it's a question of cost, okay? Cost. And I challenge all of our elected officials and Mr. Ferrara and our few wonderful police and fire chiefs, get your heads together because we can't do this. You guys have to give us something that is sellable to the voters, okay? But we have to do something as voters to recognize you have to spend money. When this town didn't spend money, guess what? I lost my job because the stairs collapsed in the old police station, okay? On my job, down the stairs, all rotted out. It's all true. Mr. Dufresne will take you through if you don't believe me. And guess what? Worse things are going to happen in that building. All because somewhere in the past, maybe many, many decades, people didn't want to spend money, okay? One more thing. My wife and I have 10 kids. We sent all of our kids to college. We spent money. Some of them screwed up in college, and the rest of them are doing quite well. But we invested in their future. So why not invest in the future of this town and do the right thing and trust you people? I trust you. I've seen you work so hard over the years. I've seen the chief. I worked with him a lot. It's a 24/7 job for him, and same with the police department. We owe it to them. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the town. Thank you.
Joe Conrad, local historian. I know what happened to the town hall. In 1955, there was a flood. The water came up through the front doors and flooded the entire building. which means that where the furnace is in the cellar was filled with silt, the side windows broke, and numerous trees were pulled into the building. It took the town of Warren 5 years just to make repairs from minimum occupancy. And that's when we had all the town offices down there. When it comes to the police department, I've actually been through there more than once. And even in the early 1960s, the police station was that single room under the bell tower, because the room behind it was the selectman's office. No matter how much money you dump into there, because of the damage that was done in 1955, weakening the foundation to the building, and because there is technically a brook that goes down the side of the building, moisture and water still continue to seep in. I'm surprised the building has not collapsed in on itself. As for the fires, in the early 1900s, there was a fire, as David explained about the burnt wood in the attic. And at that time, we did not have a modern pumper. We had a 4-man, 2-hand pump. The men were not even on duty at that time. We had a total volunteer fire department. They had to be summoned. And if it had not been for the fire departments of the surrounding towns coming to help us, the entire building would have been burnt to the ground. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, taller. So my name's Javier Melendez. I've been a resident of town. I bought a house in Warren, under 30 years old. I've been in town now. I have a 4-year-old daughter who's going to be joining the school system here shortly. I wanted to first, real quick, and I have a couple notes, some stats I just want to bring up. First off, I want to thank Travis's team, the cable access team, for filming these. Also, last public safety meeting here was one of their top videos, currently sits at 354 views, so it's their top video of the year so far. So there's that. So I wanted to just address a couple things. I've been watching this issue now for a long time. I have experience both working alongside the departments as well as in other fire departments, other police departments, in various roles I've held in the past. Couple things I just want to currently call out, and then I will address a couple issues that I actually spoke with our state representatives on for this, so people understand where the state's coming from for this. So first is the police facility in itself is actually a great significant safety concern. Right now, there's inadequate holding capacity for prisoners. We are relying on state police, Brookfield, Spencer Police, when they can, worst case, Worcester County Sheriffs, when we can get them out there, which takes our officers a long time to go out of town, come back, and requiring other towns around us to watch the town for us. In addition to that, the current setup's not safe for prisoners as well, especially violent offenders. It's through the grace of God and through the professionalism of our officers that a violent prisoner hasn't escaped custody, been hit on Main Street, or caused any other issues. For instance, Saturday morning when we're all at the post office or going to Mason's and they're trying to bring a prisoner in. So it's through the grace of God that nothing has happened yet. That's why things like a Sally port, proper intake is necessary, and some of these features that we look at on these schematics, we're relying on the professionals who do this day in, day out, who know that how a prisoner can escape restraints, things like that, and could be a danger to the community. We are relying on their expertise. That being said, I believe the select board would take our initiative and our requests very seriously. I would encourage anybody to invest the time, either go down to the departments, look at it, send your suggestions in, because it is a community effort. This isn't a town meeting like a traditional sense. This is a focus group meeting, if you really think about it, where we're getting input, they're collecting our input, they're taking our suggestions, etc. They're gonna take all that and look at it. Okay, maybe we don't put the firearm simulator because that might save us X number of dollars. The gentleman from the bank showed us a $30 million option. There's a $25 million option on the table. The town doesn't have to take the biggest option, right? So there's options, but it's on the town to have these civil conversations, understanding that the state is forcing some of this on us, and regardless of whatever political aspects there are, this is actually state mandated. The town had a ready-to-go solution for everybody that doesn't know to get the police department out of the town hall currently. State took it down. State said that you can only have 30-day occupancy in the solution that the select board had ready to go at Rice. So it was the state that declined that. So let me bring up the conversation I had with Representative Small, Representative Oliveira's office. Currently, there's no current significant grants that exist. The most significant grant that was passed down was to Southbridge for $1 million, and that was essentially referenced as a once-in-a-lifetime grant. Most grants and things of that nature nowadays are going to be for things like efficient heating and such, which could bring down the amounts. So if we did like energy-efficient windows, things like that, but it's not going to be a big funding avenue. In addition, the state currently does not have any funding avenues that exist in the legislature for things like funding a fire or police department. There is for schools, so the state could say, oh, we're gonna give you so much for a new school. There's nothing like that in the legislature or the Massachusetts general laws that allow for that currently. So we are kind of stuck where we are. This is, again, some of it's state-driven, some of it's federal, some of it's requirements like NFPA, but this is where we are. We have to make do with what we have. I told my daughter the same thing. We got to make do with what we have. So one other last thing I do want to bring up here. I am not comparing our town to another town. I'm simply comparing construction costs. So please keep that in mind. Charlton just started construction on their substation B. That is a fire station substation. They're replacing a current structure. That is at 13,200 square feet. Cost is going to be roughly $18.9 million. That was approved last year. They just broke ground. The smallest option at 25,000 square feet, which was around $25.6 million total estimated cost. Again, that is 2027 possible date, includes inflation, things like that. That cost is at 25.6. So we're looking at 18.9, which is breaking ground now, for 25.6, which won't even start for 3 years. And this building we're talking about solves all three. Takes about both substations for Warren and police all in one building. So we're getting actually a better cost-benefit analysis. Last thing I'm gonna say, because I've spoken way too much, is, again, I bought our house here, under 30 years old. We had our daughter here, and I look at this as an investment in our town. I understand, and I'm not happy to pay an additional $1,000+ a year in taxes myself. However, I look at this like I look at my tools. I buy a brand name because I trust in the quality and service. This is a brand name team to me because I see the quality that they're giving us, so I take the suggestions that they have. Granted, I'm still gonna do my research and make sure the reviews are good, but I do believe investing in the town, investing in our police and our fire team is important. So that's why I look to the town to make the investment when this does come up, because it is needed. Thank you.
I'm just going to have it short. I know people that didn't come here tonight because they already know they're voting no. I think that was wrong. I think they missed a lot of information and questions and things that you're going to try to improve on. The one thing I'm concerned about is you talk about the increase in maybe the population of the town. I think this, unless you can get this way down, I think it's going to be detrimental because everybody's taxes are going to go up. Anybody that's renting is going to increase their rents. You know, anybody that has property that rents. And, you know, I don't see that as, I see it as detrimental if we can't get this, you know, down.
So yes, we, for more than 3.5 years, we in open meetings have been talking about this. We have an issue. We have an old building that hasn't been maintained, and we need to do something about it. I heard somebody said, what if we regionalize with another town? Wait, that doubles the price of the building, right? Because they have equipment, they have other people too. So it's almost the same. And where do you want this building? Oh, we want it here. Yeah, maybe they want it there too. So it will be a little harder for that. Not impossible, but just saying. Then let's think about the option of, let's do nothing. Sooner or later, something could happen, knock on wood. Something happens to an officer, to an inmate, to the public. We get sued. We're gonna have to raise the taxes anyway, and we still don't have a place for the police. We may lose our police if something like that happens. Think about it. If we do nothing, everything's gonna go up anyway, and we need something done. Everybody's welcome to our meetings. We have an open door policy. Help us get this done. We need it for the town and for you guys.
Ray Capaco. I appreciate the comments that were said by some of the previous speakers, especially Mr. Dusty. I think he nailed it. But I've got a quick analogy. It's only an example, but just makes the point, which everyone's already belabored, I think, this evening. A family of 5, they're having another child. They need a new vehicle. A new SUV or van would be the best option, but they simply can't afford it. Plan B, get a used van or a used SUV to accommodate the next child, or twins if they're coming. Maybe even a plan C, a very bad option, but they could maybe do it. They just get another second vehicle, and when the family all has to go someplace at the same time, they take 2 cars. Not a very good option, but they can afford it. And so I've heard mixed messages coming from the stage this evening. I've heard that you want our input and you want to hear different options and so forth and so on, but very definitely the following was said at the last community conversation. When the selectmen were asked, is there a plan B? The answer was, and I'll quote, there is no plan B. There's no option. There's either we do this or we don't do it. We've looked at plan B. There's no plan B. So far, the only thing that we can do is move forward to a public safety complex for our first responders or do nothing. I emphatically reject, and I believe the town does too, the do nothing argument is a non-starter. I don't think there's anyone, is there anyone, who wants to do nothing? You're right. I think it's unanimous. We are going to do something. But for the love of God, could I have the selectmen give an emphatic clarifying statement that you will reject what was said at the last meeting and say, we will consider a plan B? Thank you.
We will consider a plan B and maybe a plan C. So, as I said before, Jim, myself, sat down with the 2 chiefs and we started to talk about different options. And one thing that came up was the Milo room. So right there, almost $1 million. So again, we're starting at the top and we're working our way through the process. So we're going to sit down again. Again, your feedback after the first meeting, there was a lot of talk and stuff on Facebook and everything, right? It was kind of crazy. But that made us think and think of new ideas, think of different ways to do things. So we are going to continue this process. What else can we look at? What other options do we have? Can I say, here's option B? No, I can't. But we are working towards B, C, D, maybe, who knows? I mean, ultimately, I think what would be great is at a future vote, is you get the choice. You can do A, you can vote on B, you can vote on C. And through all these meetings, everybody understands what the costs are, what the consequences are. And the town can choose, we want the complex, we want just a police station, we want something in between. Here's what it's going to cost. Here's the implications for the future. And then we all decide.
It's definitely spot on. Like I said, there's everyone in town, and I've seen all the stuff everybody's saying online. We all know we got to do something, and we all want something done. The police department, they should have been out of there years ago, and there were other options, and none of the options were taken. We are going to have a problem the second we're out of that building. We all know it's going to deteriorate. Am I wrong? Is that building not on the National Register of Historic Buildings? So we can do nothing. We can't take it down. We can't sell it in parts. That's not an option. The building has to stay where it is because that was done.
You can.
You can take it down?
Yeah, the registration is not, I guess, binding. Ultimately, the town decides the fate of the building.
I'd love to see that in writing. But great, that's fantastic.
No, we dealt with this like 2 or 3 years ago when all this started to come up. If we feel that we need to do something with it, we do it.
I think one of the things we're overlooking here, everybody's saying, you know, that it's the huge nuclear option. We build a massive complex, and that's what's going to solve the problem. I understand from just a square footage problem, the problems we're having with the police department. Trucks are getting bigger, fires are getting bigger, chemicals are getting bigger. I mean, God forbid we get any of the electric vehicles light on fire in this town. We're all screwed. Everything's getting bigger. The problem is the police department's needs, short of a larger parking lot and maybe a better area with a sally port, the building is there. You build a fire department and you retrofit the one we have downtown. It's got plenty of parking. It's got room for a sally port on the right-hand side where the brush truck entrance is now. And we could retrofit that for a fraction of what it's going to cost us for a brand new building, and we can build a new fire department. That's going to have room for all the modern stuff they need. It's there, it's in the center of town where, in my opinion, a police department should be. A police department should be in the center of town because that's where people go when you have a problem. The problem with a fire department in the center of town is traffic and sheer magnitude of the size of the equipment in the trucks. So you put that outside of the center of town, and that's fine. The police department, in my opinion, needs to be where it is. And that's right in the center of town where the bulk of your problems are, first of all, and where people know where to find it. So you retrofit the fire department, and I know it would be a lot to that, but it can't be $16 million to turn that building into a usable police department. And you build a fire department with the new amenities that it needs. I mean, we've been transporting prisoners in this town for as long as I've been here, and I'm a Cheslack, and there's plenty of us Polacks around this town who've been here a long time. And I can tell you, we've been transporting our troops, our prisoners all this time, and it's been done. We don't need long-term prisoner storage. They all get moved out of town, because then you get long-term storage, you got to feed them, you got to house them, you have to have extra manpower to babysit them, and we're not going to hire that guy. We're not going to have a guard who stays inside and babysits prisoners. It's not cost-effective to our small town, right? I'd rather pay a secretary to sit in the front and be there when the town needs them than somebody to babysit a guy in the back sitting in a cell who could potentially hurt himself. Transport them to a facility that's trained and has the manpower to take care of the prisoner, like we do now. But like I said, this mega complex it's great. But I think a police department where a police department is needed, right in the center of town, where the bulk of our problems happen, and they're centralized to be dispatched to all of the initial problems, and a fire department where it's large enough to man all the vehicles. These trucks aren't getting any smaller, and we need more firemen. We do. We're a volunteer force. We need more kids coming out of this school. I mean, this program we have here in this school is top-notch. We need more of these kids to want to stay in town and take part in the growth in town. And that falls on the selectmen to bring jobs to town. And I know you've been working on it. It's time to redouble those efforts because that tax money that those jobs pay helps pay for things like this. Charlton and those towns up there, right now they're getting Amazon money. They could get a helicopter if they wanted to with the tax revenue that Amazon is paying the towns. We don't have that. And we need it. We need more business to stay. Not just the small businesses, place like the Warren, well, it's not Warren Pumps, IMO Industries, or whatever they're calling themselves now. Thank God they've stayed, because they've been a tax base. We need larger tax bases, and it falls on, unfortunately, falls on your shoulders. You guys ran, you wanted to be elected. We need you to help bring stuff to town, because that's what pays for projects like this. But another craft store downtown, it isn't gonna pay for this project. So like I said, if we have to pick one now, to me, it's the fire department. We build a modern fire department complex that can train and house and plan for more firemen, because God knows we need them. And we have that building right downtown with plenty of parking we can turn into a police department. That's just my 2 cents, and who am I? I'm nothing, but I'm just one guy seeing a use of a structure that if we move out of, we're gonna have it up for sale for what, 10 years before somebody finally buys it off us for next to nothing? When it's on a nice corner, a good location, you can rip the basketball court out of there if you have to, and use that corner for the Sally Port. You have a lot of options in that building. You don't need Boston's police department. You need Warren's police department.
So I'm a little surprised that Ray came and said that this was the only option, when for years we've been looking at many options. We look at the bank, we look at the train station, we look at the Station A, Station B. Me as a former architect, I've been putting a lot of effort on this, and we've been looking at all the options. Yes, it's true, we can come down and show more options, but me or the Board of Selectmen can just come and say, hey, this is what we need. That's why we got a grant, to tell us exactly what we need as a town for a police and a fire station. Now we can start scaling down, but it's up to us. Remember, buy cheap, buy twice.
If I could, just in closing, I just want to, again, thank everyone for coming this evening. I think we've had a lot of great conversation. I'm glad it went that way. I think there's a lot more conversation. I think it's clear that the people in the room and the taxpayers of this town recognize that there are problems that we have to address. I would simply say in closing that there's no doubt we have to address both these issues in some way, shape, or form. Coming up with a plan B, a plan C, obviously that's a goal that we're going to have to look at in the coming months and secure some funding sources to do that, whether they be architectural plans or something like that. What I will say is that if we do build a standalone police station for, call it $10 million, $12 million, whatever that may be, my fear, if we only do that right now, okay, my fear is that as soon as that payment kicks in for all of us taxpayers, who is going to raise their hand again and say, in 5 years, do it again? And that's the reality, okay? So we have to be smarter than that, and we have to try to fix both of these issues, or at least attempt to find some common ground so that we can address these issues. So I would just ask you all to keep an open mind when we come forward with other plans and other things, and please try to fix both at one time, because my fear is if only one gets done, the other one never will, and then we're right behind the 8 ball again. Thank you.
I just got a couple of quick things. I mean, I think everybody here, obviously, we all know that something needs to be done. One of the gentlemen that came up here said that he was concerned that, the presentation as is, a lot of work goes into it, I understand that, but I think he had it right, where a lot of people are going to look at that and go like, we're out of here. We don't want nothing to do with it. So one question I have for the architects are, do you have floor plans and considerations from a past project you've done for a town of our size versus the town of the one that you presented?
Yes.
I mean, are those things that we should or could be looking at instead of?
Yeah, sure. I was not intending to say that you need to build what I showed you in those pictures.
Yeah, I know,
I
but
was
I think
trying
that's
to
how it
illustrate
comes
the
across.
idea.
So I understand
Yeah.
that that's what wasn't your intent, but I think that a lot of people, it comes across it like, this is what we're going to have to build, and maybe something different is available that would sell the project better. I think, like you said, I think a big fear, I think for everyone that realizes we need something is that, we're selling something that we can't, you can't sell. One other thing, I think, he brought it up about the maintenance of the past buildings and things like that. I would ask the town selectmen or finance committee or something, could you put together some, and working with the architects, could you put together some kind of a maintenance plan that's required for keeping this building up as far as costs go, so we're transparent in all the costs to the taxpayers? Because, like the question I asked before about, like, what do we do with the other building? Do we demo it? There's no cost shown for that. There's cost shown, like, yeah, we could sell it. Who's gonna buy it? We just, one of the selectmen just talked about all the problems with the building, that we can't renovate it, and, and it's never gonna be a police station anyway, I get that. But I mean, anyone that have to buy it would have to do all that stuff too, so they're gonna give you pennies on the dollar of what it's supposedly worth, I would think. So I just think, I think for myself as a taxpayer, I would like to see all the costs. And I know that you don't always want to show that because you want to sell what you want to sell, but it's, I think, if we're not counting the maintenance costs, are we going to be in a situation where, like, at a certain point in time, during those payments, the 25, 30 years, we need to replace the roof. Then the people are going to be saying, like, what the shit, we just built this thing, 25 years ago, but, there's no one knows that there was supposed to be a roof that had to be added on, or things like that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's always one of the challenges when you start doing the value engineering process, is that there are things you can do that are cheaper that don't deliver on life cycle, like your roof is a really great example.
Right.
If you're going to bond a building for 30 years, you don't want a roof that's not going to last 30 years.
Right. But I mean, there's also regular maintenance and stuff
Yeah.
that the costs don't ever get accounted for, and that's why it's a shock to people or whatever.
Yeah, so if I can address the maintenance issue, we have been in the past few years, each annual town meeting, there is an article that devotes money to maintenance.
Yep.
So we have done work on the old town hall, we've done work on the senior center, we've done work at the sewer plant, we've done work at the Shepherd building, and we have, starting July 1, we have a new pot of money, and we already have projects to work on. So, what we saw a few years ago when we first started this was the old town hall and a lot of neglect.
Oh, yeah.
And it just kind of kicked in and said, okay, we have to start chipping away at stuff.
Yep.
And the thing is to get a little pot of money and start chipping away and start working on things. And we have been doing that. And some things, again, Mr. Ferrara has been able to get grants, which is huge because that little pot of money goes so much further. Now we can take while the grants may be taking more expensive stuff, now we can get maybe a lot of little things out of the way.
Yeah.
So we are working on it. And yes, the new building, whatever it is, if we get something, same thing. We put a little bit of money away every year and we chip away. A new building maybe isn't going to need stuff initially, but
hopefully
eventually it's gonna.
But it's gonna need
so
it
yeah.
at some point. Yep.
Also, keep in mind that if we have a new building, we get rid of 3. So what we're spending now in 3 buildings, heating, electric, and maintaining, it goes to the new building.
Yeah, but then you got to get rid of those buildings. Those buildings are going to go to hell if you don't do anything to them. They're
Yeah,
already
and that-
already going to hell, right?
Right,
So-
and that's, we need
And
some sort of
that's part
disposition.
that's part of the cost that we're
Yep.
not seeing, and that's something that's just concerning to me is, we're going to get stuck with a $2 million building to take down, bill to take down all these old buildings, or probably more, because there's hazardous shit in there, but
Yeah.
that's just, I just want to know, that's all. I have no doubt you guys need a place, I know the police need a place, we all know this, but there are costs that we're not talking about, I think, that should be.
Thank you, sir, and that's a great question, and we'll have some numbers prepared for you at the September meeting, if that's okay. I do want to comment on what Selectman Eihacker had indicated. It's a very small pot of money that we ask the townspeople, and we've only started asking for it since I've been here. It's $25,000 to maintain 7 buildings that haven't been maintained for the last 15 to 20 years. So we're playing catch-up with $25,000. That's like finding a needle in a haystack. So what we're trying to do, and we're trying to be as creative as we can with grants and other things to supplement that $25,000, because we know it's a lot of money on the taxpayers. So we're trying to be as creative as possible, but also look at maintaining the building. At the senior center, we've done significant improvements over there over the last year, year and a half. We're going to continue on to work there, but we're going to pivot to other buildings. We're going to look at the Shepherd building. The Shepherd building needs a lot of work and a lot of repairs. We got to look at the sewer plant. The sewer plant needs some work and some investment. The highway garage. We have 7 buildings that we have to maintain. $25,000 a year from the town is not a lot of money. And so we're trying to stretch every buck we can to prolong the life of these buildings as best we can.
I do want to say and stress one thing. We have to listen to each other during this. We can't argue with each other. I haven't seen any arguing tonight, which I'm glad for. But I do want to say we have to come together as a community and actually think of an idea as a community. We cannot argue with each other, and we cannot spend time arguing with each other.
I like that comment. I just want to say a couple things here. You know, that the whole point of having these meetings is about getting feedback, and we didn't walk into this exercise expecting everybody to say yes, what a great idea. We expected to get challenged, and we have, and I thank you for that. And we value that and respect that as much as the folks that stand up and say yes, we're in favor of this. So thank you all for what was a really great conversation tonight. And I'm sure that the folks here in the town are going to give a lot of consideration to the ideas that were thrown out today. And it may alter what we talk about in September. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great evening, and thank you for participating.
Thank you.